So sorry for the technical issues, guys. It's maybe some issue is there. We are unable to see the screen, but no worries. Please give me some time to fix this, and hopefully it should work. Okay, so is my screen visible now to everyone? I hope it's visible now, right? Cool. So let's start off. Okay. So, what we are going to make today? We are going to make a Swiggy clone. Everyone uses Swiggy, right, to order food. And Swiggy is quite a big app now. It's present on web also, as well as your Android, right? So we are going to create a Swiggy clone using HTML and CSS. Just these two things. So if you'll see the Swiggy website, we'll create the clone of that using simple, plain HTML and CSS. Okay, that's our motive for this session. This is the agenda and the topic that we are going to take up. Now, what's next? So you might be thinking, so for the people who might have already seen the posts on LinkedIn, or you might have followed or got the posters of this thing, they might be knowing. But for the people who are not knowing, let me introduce myself first. Who am I? Why am I taking this session, right? So I'm Suman Ghosh. I'm currently working as a software developer at Navi, which is founded by Sachin Bansal, the founder of Flipkart. Therefore, before that, I was working with Geek for Geeks as the member of technical staff. And apart from this, I've taught numerous students in different technologies, basically in front end. So the technologies in which I have worked in are HTML, CSS, and Bootstrap, and different styling libraries, and then React and Angular. So these are the technologies I've primarily worked into in front end. So that's all about me. I'm the instructor for this particular session. And now, what will we learn? This is the main question. This should be our main motive as we are in this session. So, obviously, you are here to learn HTML, CSS. But apart from that, what specifically we are going to learn in this. So people who don't know HTML, CSS, don't worry. We are going to pick everything from the very basic. Okay, I'll tell you and explain you everything in HTML, CSS. Then apart from that, also for the people who might know some part of HTML, CSS, still it's going to be very fruitful for you guys, because it's not just that very basic, but yes, you will be able to understand how to break your whole HTML web page into layouts and then create the structure. Okay, then we are going to see how we are going to use CDNs. Now you might not know about CDNs, so we are going to talk about that. We are going to talk about the most used layouts in CSS, flexbox and grid especially, which are very important from every perspective in CSS. And then we'll also learn about developer tools again, right? So it's not just that simple CSS, HTML, CSS. We'll start from the basic, and then we'll cover the most important parts that are there in HTML, CSS. Okay. Next, you might be asking that, Mom, I don't know HTML, CSS. What will happen? Will I be able to grasp this, or are there any prerequisites? So you can see no prerequisites or anything, any pre-knowledge, any preconceived knowledge that you would require for this session. No knowledge is required. I'll take up all the things from the very basic. Okay, so you need not worry that you guys don't know HTML, CSS. That's completely fine, right? Now, tools that are required. You should be handy with these tools. First, obviously, you need a laptop or a computer. If you are currently on your mobiles, that's completely fine. When we'll start with the coding part, you will require a laptop or a computer, obviously. And next thing, any browser you will require, so that you can see whatever you are coding that should be visible somewhere, right? So for the UI part, you are going to use some browser, whatever you want to use. That's your wish, Chrome, Google Chrome, or a Firefox. Then for the code editing part, now since you will have to write the code somewhere, right? So for that, you need to use the VS Code. Okay. So let's start with this now, with the coding part. So let me show you the Swiggy website first, right? So this is the Swiggy website. Everyone can see this. Or, first of all, let me tell you the very basics of, since okay, we are going to learn about Swiggy, and the main things that we are going to learn are HTML and CSS. So let me tell you a very basic thing about web technology, especially as front end. So in web technology, you have basically two fields. Okay, the web technologies are also divided into two domains. First, you have the front end technologies, and then you have the back-end technologies. Okay, so what are the front-end technologies? You can see this whole website, right? The UI, everything that a user can see. Me being a user or you being a customer, you are able to see the website, right? You are able to use it. You just know about the UI, right? The designs and whatever functionality is there. Let's see, like if I click on this delivery time ratings, I'll be navigated to some other page. If I just click on filters, I'll be able to filter, right? So all these things are happening in front of me in the interface. These things are happening. So this is a part of what front end technology consists of. Okay, so in front end technologies, it's basically that whatever you can see on the screen, the interface, the website interface that is there, that is your front end. What comes into the back end? All the coding stuff, that the logic part that is there, all the servers, the databases, all those things are handled in the backend. But don't worry, what we are going to learn in this class is very specific to front end. Okay, very, very specific to front end. And in front end, there are three major technologies. Let me just show you all these technologies. So, what we have, so in our front end, we have three major things. Okay, the first thing that we need to learn, can you tell me about these three things that are there? Any answers, guys? HTML, CSS, JS. Okay, very correct, very correct. So we have the main three technologies that are there. First is your HTML, then you have your CSS, and then you have your JS. So let's start with HTML, the basics of HTML. What is HTML? Why is it used for? So everyone knows about websites, right? Collection of all the web pages. So now to create the structure of the web pages, you need something, right? To create the structure of the web page, we use HTML. Okay, so to create the structure of your website, we use HTML, and it is basically like, you can consider, we being humans, the first thing that makes us is the skeleton. Our structure is created by the skeleton, right? So in our case, the structure is actually a skeleton, right? A skeletal system that we have. So in case of websites, the structure of the website is created using the HTML. So you can consider that HTML is the skeleton system of the websites, of the web apps. Now comes, you might have seen Wikipedia. Have you guys seen Wikipedia? Let me show you Wikipedia. So if you'll go to Wikipedia, it has all the content and everything, let's say, and the website is not quite having a lot of styles, as you can see. It's very simple. So there are many cases, like what would you prefer? If you'll go on a website, you want to learn from a website which is quite interactive and have good styles, it is attractive, or you would want to go and read from a website which is very dull, just fonts and all those things are there? What would you prefer? Which website would you prefer to learn from? From an attractive website or a website which doesn't have any styles, it's just a dull website? So obviously you are going to learn from a website that is attractive, right? So everyone wants to create a website that has more styles and more attractive it is, so that it can attract more customers, because everyone wants to learn from, if it's websites also, books also, everyone wants to learn from things which are what you say, interactive and attractive as well. That's why we have the CSS to make our website more interactive as well as attractive. Okay, so again, let me just take this example. When human when we as human were in our initial stages, we were monkeys and we were like, we didn't know about styles and all, right? Then the society established, it's civilized, and then we got to know about styles, right? Ki, theek hai, we have to take this brand clothes, that brand clothes. Brands are quite famous. Why? Because brands or good brands or clothes or these things make us look more attractive, better, to have a better style quotient, right? For that purpose, we wear clothes and jewelries or whatnot things, right? Good clothes from good brands, right? So this is what CSS does to our website, provides styling to our website. And why is that styling required? Because obviously, as I told you, every user or customer wants to learn from a website that is interactive and not a website that is dull, right? That is why we require CSS. Now comes the third part. So the structure, the skeletal is created. You have provided the website some styles. Now what's next? A website that has only HTML, CSS is considered to be static. Like, it doesn't have any functionality. But can you see this website? This Swiggy. So if you see this, if I click on any button, it's navigating me to some other place. If I just change the location, let me say Kerala, for example. So if I change the location, it is going to fetch me all the restaurants with respect to the location that I filled. So these behaviors, that on click on of some button, right, on doing something, you are getting different reactions, or you are getting different things on served on your web page. So how is this behavior handled? This behavior of a website is handled using JavaScript. Okay, so it allows us to provide functionalities and behavior, a particular behavior to our website. So again, let me take the example of we being humans. So okay, if we would have just been like, we had this skeletal, all these systems we have, we are just wearing clothes for the style and all those purposes, right? But we don't have any emotions. We don't react to things. Will anyone even call us humans? No, right? Because humans are made up of behaviors and what you say, emotions. So, in the same way, a website that is only having HTML, CSS is kind of a static website. It's just to show you some normal information if you want. Once you add JS to it, you are actually adding functionalities. And basically, if I tell you, you are adding emotions to your website, right? So if you see here, these kind of websites which have HTML, CSS, and JS as well, we call such websites as dynamic websites. Okay. I hope it's clear till here, guys. The very basics of web technology. Now, the two things that we are going to take up are HTML and CSS for this particular session. So using HTML and CSS only, we are going to create our Swiggy clone. So are you ready to create the Swiggy clone? Awesome. So starting with our HTML, okay? So let me show you what we are going to create today. Let me go back to the screen and let us go here in the main page. And yes, okay. So whenever you go to swiggy.com, the thing that you'll see is obviously a nav bar that is there. This thing is called a nav bar, the bar that you can see on the top. Any website you see, it always has a nav bar. What is a nav bar? It's just a navigation bar so that you can navigate to different pages in the web page. So similarly, this is a navigation bar which is having the icon, the logo. Basically, then it is showing you if you want to add the location, in whichever location you are in, you can just add the location. Then you have the search button if you want to search anything, the offers that are there, a help section is there, a sign in section, and then how many items you have added in your cart, that is present. Okay, now, so this is the nav bar. Next, we have this content section wherein you can see these elements. Let us consider this element again. Again, on the right side, you can see the number of restaurants that are present, let's say in Kerala, since I had given. So it is showing me the number of restaurants that are present in Kerala, maybe near me. So they are showing 7 restaurants, right? And then you can filter all these things according to the relevance, using the delivery time, the ratings that are there. You want, I just want the food from the place which is having the highest rating. So according to that, in the delivery time or the rating section, you'll be able to see those particular restaurants. Then from, if you want to filter using cost low to high, high to low, these are the filters, and there are other filters also that are present here. You can see, right? And then you have the list of all these restaurants in form of cards. So what you can see here is a card. Okay, this component is can be called as a card, basically, wherein you have the details, the image, an image is there, the name of the restaurant is there, what all things it provides, we have that. Then the rating that is provided by people to this restaurant, the time that it might take to deliver your item, how far is it, basically. So it is 65 minutes far than this particular place. For two, how much amount it is going to take, if there are any coupons that is present. And then if you want to have a quick view on the items what is present, then you have this quick view which is coming on hovering. Once I just hover my pointer to this card, I'm able to see this quick view, right? So these are all the cards. Next we have this footer section. So these are the 3 things why I'm showing you, because these are the 3 things that we are going to create in our Swiggy clone. So let me show you what we are going to create. So can you see this? This is what we are going to create today. I won't say that it is 100% clone, because you might see some things we obviously cannot make a clone which is 100% quite similar to what we have. But yes, we'll try to create at least 90% of what Swiggy's interfaces, UI is, user interfaces. So this is what I have made, and this is what we are going to make in this particular session today. The first thing that we are going to create is this nav bar. The next thing would be this content section, which will constitute of the number of restaurants, the relevance, and also, guys, to be very precise, in this session, we are just going to create the UI. So don't like confuse it with like the Swiggy's in Swiggy we are able to click on these buttons and we are able to see these cards. All this behavior can be done using JavaScript. In this case, we are just going to create the UI. So nothing will work. Like if you'll click on something, nothing will work. It's just that we have created the UI in this particular session, right? So this is the UI wherein we are having these cards. So you can see the cards are quite similar to what we have. Next, we have the footer. So these three sections we are going to create in this class. And also, if you'll see, the whole Swiggy website has a very consistent HTML and CSS. The UI is very consistent. So if you'll create, click on relevance, it is again going to have the same cards. The CSS, everything is quite similar. If you'll go to the delivery time also, this section again you are going to see the similar CSS. Same for the ratings. Any filter that I'll click on, you will be able to see the same screen, just that the items are going to change in some cases, right? So now let's start with the HTML. But the first thing that we need to do is to create a folder structure. So what I have done, I have created a folder already with this name, Swiggy clone. Inside this, I'm going to add two things, two folders. For writing the HTML, you need to create an index.html file. So what does this index.html does? In this file, you are going to write your HTML, and this extension .html denotes that this is a HTML file. Okay. Now, the next thing, to write the CSS, we'll create another file which we'll call style.css. So what is the extension for adding CSS? The extension that you need to add in your file is .css, which is going to mean that in this you are going to add your styles. CSS means cascading style sheets. So a group of, you can add one style sheet. So this is basically a style sheet wherein we are going to add all the styles. So either you can add one style sheet or you can add as many style sheets as you can. Okay. But since this will be a small website, so we'll require just one style sheet here. Okay. So let's start with the first thing that we are going to add is doc type HTML. This is the first thing. What is doc type HTML? It is going to tell you that the document type is HTML and what is the exact version of this HTML that we are using. It's version 5. So let me tell you the version. So every language or whatever tool we are having, everything has a version. So please keep this in mind. The current version of HTML is 5 and the current version of CSS that we are going to use is 3. Okay. So this particular tags. So everything in HTML is a tag basically, or element. So this is a tag, doc type, wherein we are actually saying that this document type is HTML and the version of it is 5. Okay. Next thing, everything in HTML is added inside the HTML tag. So this is our HTML tag. Now we have two things inside the HTML. We have the head tag and we have the body tag. We have these two tags only inside our HTML. Now, what is the difference between head tag and body tag? What all things can we do in head tag and what all things can we do in the body tag? So in the head tag, whatever style sheets you want to add, any links, any JavaScript file you want to add, anything which you don't want the user to see, all those things you add in the header section. Okay. And all the UI that you can see here, all these things are added in the body. Whatever you want the user to see on the screen, that is added inside your body tag. All the tags, all the things that you don't want the user to see, you add them in the head tag. Okay. Let me show you how. So in the head, what I'll do, I'll add a title. I'll give it Swiggy clone. Okay. So I'll give the title as Swiggy clone. What is title now? So can you guys see here? Order food online. Something is there present on the screen on the tab. So where does this text come from? This text comes from this title tag, which is there present inside the head tag. So I'll give here Swiggy clone. The next thing that I'm going to do is, since guys, I want to attach my CSS to my HTML, which is an external CSS file. Okay. So I'm going to attach this CSS file how? Using the link tag. And I'm going to give the path here, which is style.css. Okay. So you require to attach your file, right? Your HTML should know which CSS it is using. Since it's another file, you need to attach the CSS file in HTML if you want to use it. Correct? That is what I have done. I have attached my style sheet here, style.css to my HTML. So this is what I have here. Let us just create a sample. Let me write Swiggy clone here. Okay. Now, how to run this? Guys, is my okay? So my wait, just give me a second. I'll just change my screen. Yep, I know. Just give me a second, guys. I'm just sharing my screen here. Okay, so it should be visible now. Is this thing visible? The editor? Yes. Isn't this VS Code visible to everyone? Yes, right? So, okay. So, let me just give you the overview again for the people since you weren't able to see the screen. So, let me just again come back here. Now, you will be able to see that the first thing that we have is doc type HTML. As I told you, what is this for? This is used to tell that the document type is HTML. Okay, and the version of this is 5. As I told you, the current version of HTML is 5. Next, what we are going to have, we are going to have this HTML tag. So everything that we write in HTML is inside an HTML tag. And inside this, we have two tags, the head tag and the body tag. Okay, inside the head tag also, what do we add inside the head tag? So anything that we don't want to show the user, all those things we add inside the head tag. And as I showed you, can you see this thing here? Order food online, that is written on this tab. From where does it come from? It comes from the title. So here, since I've added Swiggy clone, so now you'll be able to see this inside the tab. Next, I want to link this style.css to my HTML file. How do I do that? I use the link tag here. Link tag is used to link all the links that anything, any other link also, if you want to add, you can use a link tag to add it. Now, what is the relation of this? The relation is that it's a style sheet. Obviously, CSS, as I told you, cascading style sheet. So we are just rel means the relation. Okay. So this tells, okay, what type of file it is. It's a style sheet. Okay. Next thing, href. What does href do? In the href, we provide the path of that file, or if it's a link, that is the URL that we provide here. So currently, since our style is present here, we just need to write style.css and we'll be able to attach our href here. Okay. And what I've done simply, whatever things you want to show the user on the screen, we add all those things in our body. So I just have created one h1 tag, uh, and have added Swiggy clone here. So if you'll see how should we run this file now, so you'll require one extension. Let's come to this extension whose name is live server. So you can use this Ritwik Days extension, which is pretty good. You just need to currently, since I've installed it, so I can see the uninstall button. But you can click on uninstall, install, and you'll be able to see this particular, use this particular live server. How it is used, let me show you. So once you install it, you'll be able to see something like this. Wait. So you'll be able to see go live, this particular text below here. Once you click here, you'll be redirected to that particular port. So currently, we are using 5502. Why is this live server very useful? Because in normal HTML CSS, like if you'll just try to open the HTML CSS, you'll have to refresh. Let's say you are making any change in the HTML file, you'll have to refresh the screen, only then you'll be able to see the changes. But here I need not refresh anything. Let's say if I'm going to add a P, that this section is for learning HTML, CSS. I'll just save this file and you will be able to see the changes ASAP on the screen. I need not reload my file. Okay. So now comes the turn of writing the actual HTML that we'll have to create. So let's see how can we break this thing into layouts. So guys, whenever you see a website, the first thing which you should do is break the website into pieces. It helps you or in life and everything, like if you are going to move into coding or programming languages, if any problem is given to you, the problems become easy when you break them into pieces. So here also the task that is given to us in hand is to create a website, is Swiggy clone. So now we are going to break them into pieces, this website into pieces. How do we do that? Let's see. Before that, do you have any doubts still here? So if you have any doubts, you can just. Yes, guys, you'll be given the code, don't worry. The code and everything will be provided to you guys, okay? Okay, so moving forward, as I told you, now we need to break our website into pieces. So let's break it. How do we break it? The first thing that I can see is that we have a nav bar, right? Then we have this whole section, which is the content section. Then we have the third section, which is the footer section. Okay, so we have these three sections. Let us create these three sections first of all. So what I'll do inside my body, let me remove everything. Let me add it here, Swiggy clone. Now, as I said you, let's first create a main container. So what I'll do, I'm just writing div, I'll give it a class, main container, and inside this, so what I did, so this is just a shortcut. When you want to create a div, you just write div, and if you want to give a class, you just write the dot and the class name, and you just hit the tab button. Okay, so if you hit the tab button, this thing will be created, your tag will be created. This is just a shortcut which you can use. Next thing that we have is as I told you, div. What is div tag? Is used for creating the divisions in your website. So this is the main tag inside which now I'm going to add my all tags. So first tag that I'm going to add is the header tag, and I'm going to give it the class called navbar. Okay. So inside this, I'm going to have my navbar. So this will be my navbar section. Let me comment it out. So this is called a comment. What is a comment in HTML? On CSS, we have comments. All these things will not be shown to the user. It's just for the reference of the person who is coding or anyone else who is going to see the code. Okay, just to understand ki, okay, this is navbar. Now the next thing that we are going to create, I'm going to create a main. Okay, a main section which you can call the content section. Inside this only we'll have everything, and then we have the footer section. So I'm going to create a footer with a class name called footer. Okay, so we have these three sections now. And also, very precisely, let me tell you what this header, main, footer, all these tags are specifically called semantic tags. So when HTML5, which was the newer version, this semantic tags also came into picture. Now, what are semantic tags? Semantic tags are the tags which are very self-descriptive. So you can see header, by the name only, name of the tag, you will be able to identify, okay, this is kind of a nav bar or the top section. Header is always the top section, right? So you will be able to identify that, okay, when we say header, we mean that it's the top bar that is present. Main section consists of all the content that we have, let's say. So inside the main, there is one more semantic. So let me tell you about the semantic tags as we are going through. So we have the semantic tags in HTML. Semantic tags in HTML. What are all the semantic tags? We have header, we have nav tag, then we have your section tag. Also, you have the main tag and the footer tag. So these are some semantic tags. As I told you, these tags are self-descriptive tags. And then what header does? Header and nav is again same. So header is something, the main tag you can say. If you want to add a nav tag separately, you can add it inside the header. Okay. Next, we have the main tag in which everything is present. So every website you might have seen, there is a layout, right? Wherein the first thing that you might have seen always is a header. Every website has a header which contains navbar in it. Then you have the main content, always content that is present. The last thing that you always have is a header in all websites, right? The footer that is there, the footer content. So this is the basic layout of any website that you have. This is what we are going to create using the semantics. And inside this content also, we have small sections, right? We have small sections that we have. So those are created using the section tags. Let me write it here. So this is how generally a layout of any website is planned. Okay. Layout is structuring your website, let's say. Okay. So now coming back, as I told you, we are going to create the header first. I told you the three sections that we have created. Everything now we are going to do is going to be done inside these sections. So let us first come inside this navbar section, okay? The header section, which is, so if you see here in this header, just visualize this section. Here you can see three things. And if you see here, we can divide this particular component. Let me just break it into pieces so that you are able to visualize this thing. So we have this thing here. We have this whole section. If you see, we can divide it into two pieces. This is the first piece and this is the second. We can divide it into two divs, the left div and the right div, as you can say. Next thing that you will be able to see inside the left div also. So this is the left div, okay, and this is the right div, okay. Inside the left div also, you can segregate that. On the right left, you are having an image, and then on the right, you are having this content, other, and this location, everything is there. And on the right one, simply all these elements are aligned in kind of a list, right? In kind of a list, all these items or navigation items are aligned. So you can say that actually this whole thing is inside this white color of background, and inside this you have everything. So you can say that this is a whole nav, right, inside which you have these two divs. So this is how I'm going to structure my divs also. Now why I'm explaining you to break the things like this, so that the layout becomes easier for everyone, okay. So let's come back, let's add this thing. So what we are going to do, inside the nav bar, I'm going to create a div called, what will be the div name? Let me give the div name as global nav. Okay. I'll give it the div global nav. Inside this, again, I'm going to create the div nav that I told you. So this was the div nav I told you about. I have wrapped this nav around one more div. Okay. Now, as I told you, we are going to break this div into two divs again, which will be our left div and right div. So let us do that. So we have our div. Let me give it the class left. And then we have another div, and let me give it a class called right. Okay. So we have these two divs now. Now, as I told you, what do we have in the left div? We have two things. We have the image, and then we have this content, right? So what do we have? We have the image inside this, like basically it's an a tag. If you see, this is the icon that we have, and the next thing that we have is this particular div inside which we are having this other thing, and then all these locations and everything is present. So I hope this much is clear to everyone how I'm breaking things. Okay, so since this layouting is clear, let us now inside the left div, as I told you. So this was our left div. What we are going to add, let's add an a tag, okay. And inside this a tag, let us give the href as home, okay. What is href? It is linked, and inside which I have added this name just as home, okay. Now I'll give it a class also. Let me give it a class called logo, okay. Now inside this, I'm going to add my image, this Swiggy image. And from where will I get it? I can just copy and paste it from this particular section. So I'll just go here to the main Swiggy website or the clone that we have created. Let me just right click on it, and we'll go to inspect. So what is this? This is actually a developer tool and nothing else. Okay. I'll just, for copying it, I'll just go to edit as HTML, and then I'll just copy this SVG. Since it is an SVG format, I've just copied it and I've added it on my screen. So now can you see? You'll be able to see the icon here, right? So here we have the icon now. So we are able to add the image now, and I hope my screen is also visible for the people. If my screen wasn't visible, how can you add this icon? This is the similar way as I told you. So for doing that, guys, any which way, if you want to add SVGs, like since we are making the Swiggy clone, Swiggy ka icon was already present on their website. So what I did, I just right clicked on it. Just this is just a hack, okay? So what I did to just take the exact SVG that they have used, I right click on it. Here you'll be able to see this SVG, right? This image is in SVG format. So I just right clicked, I clicked on edit as HTML. In this case, now you'll be able to copy the SVG, copy it, and paste it inside this A tag, the SVG that we have here. Okay, so this is what I have done, and everyone can also do it similarly. This is just a hack how you can rather search for high quality images on Google. Just straight away you can go to the website itself, since we are making the clone. So the icons and everything is already present. You can just copy the SVGs from here, and SVGs are always of high quality. So that is why we use SVGs in most of the cases. So now, as you can see, in the left part, we created this A tag and we are able to add the image. But what is the next part that we need to add now? We need to add this part, right? Wherein we have the location, all the location that is there. So how am I going to do it? I'm going to add a simple div, okay, and give it the class location div, let's say. Okay, so I've given the class called location div. Inside this, now I'm going to give all the span tags, because I want everything in the same line. So, guys, what is the difference between, now here comes an important question for people who might not know it. What is span and div? So, div is used to create divisions, and again, span is also used to create divisions. But the only difference is that when you use span, you will be able to add elements one after another. Like, let's say, so in this case, other Bengaluru, Karnataka, everything will be in same line. But when you will use div, everything will start from a new line. As you will be able to see, key once I have used this div, everything will start from a new line. How? Let me show you. So let me add some span here. So, and also let me give it a class called other. Okay, and let me add the text other here. Let us go to the screen. So can you see? We have other below this text, below this icon. Why? Because in div, whichever thing you add inside a div, that is going to start with a new line, from a new line. Why? Because div is a block element and span is an inline element. Okay, that is the difference. Next, I'm going to add everything in the span tag. So in my span tag, next I'm going to add the location, which will be this thing here, Bengaluru, Karnataka, India. So I'll just add it. And next I'll add one more span tag here, which I'll give the class as arrow down. Okay. Now, what is this arrow down? So can you see this arrow present here? How I have added it? I have used an icon here. So this is just an arrow icon which I've used. Now, how to use this icon? From where have I got this icon? Because icons are not present in HTML, okay? You need to get it from some library. So from which library I'm going to use it? I'm going to use font awesome. Okay, so you can straight away on Google just search font awesome. The first thing that you'll get here is the font awesome library. So what is font awesome? It provides you different icons, whatever you want. Now if I click on icons, let's say I want an icon of a user. Okay, so whatever icon you'll require, you will be able to get it from this library. Now this library is present on your let's say laptop. It's there on this particular server. How can we add it to our website? We want to use it in our website. Up there is not any way कि just you copy it and paste it. How to use these things, how to use libraries. So that is where I was talking about CDNs. If you remember in the initial, when we started this class, we talked about CDNs. So what is a CDN? A CDN is, so what is a CDN? The full form is Content Delivery Network. So it stands for Content Delivery Network. So generally, let me tell you, for example, what we did right now. So we had our CSS in a different file and our HTML in a different file, right? Now we wanted to use the styles that were present in the style sheet. So how did we do it? We used this link tab to link our style sheet to our HTML, the simplest thing that we did. Since it was on our project only, we just gave it a part, use style.css, and it will be able to connect to style.css now. So the similar thing we are going to here, we want to link our website, which is in our local, to this particular font awesome icon so that we can use its resources. So how do we do that? We do that using the CDN. What is the CDN? It is simply just a link, a URL. Okay. So how do you find a font awesome CDN? You can just click on font awesome 6 CDN. Okay, the search for it, the first thing that you'll get is the CDN. Okay, just see the version, it's 6.2. Whatever is mentioned here is the version of that library. Okay, so always try to use the latest versions of any library just to like prevent or avoid any mismatch in the thing. So currently I'm using 6.2. You just need to copy the link tag and you just need to add it below here. Okay, so this is how now I'll be able to use the icons that are present in Font Awesome. Okay, how? So I did the CDN already. Now let me search for arrow down. If I search this, I'll find here arrows. Let us search for the angle downs. Yep. So I have this angle down. What I now need to do, I'll just click on it and we'll get this code. This code snippet I've copied. You need to add it inside this span. Okay. Once you add it, can you see this icon present here? This is just because we added that that CDN. If I'll remove that CDN, let me just comment this out. You'll not be able to see the CDN now. Why? Because we haven't connected to Font Awesome icons yet. We need to link it to our website like we did for style.css, the CSS, right? If we wouldn't have linked the CSS also, again, we'll not be able to use the style sheet. So in the similar way, you need to link that particular library to your HTML, okay? Also, one more thing that I'm using here is a font whose name is Mulish, and I'm going to use Google Fonts for it. So how to use Google Fonts? Again, so Google Fonts provides you so many fonts, right? So if one of the fonts I want to use, I can just go to it. So currently, let me just go to Poppins. Okay, let's say I want to use this Poppins text. What do I do? Let me just remove all from here. And now I just need to select. I've selected. I want regular 400. Then I want medium 500. 500 is the font weight, how bold the text will be basically. Medium, regular, all these are font sizes. Okay. Now I want semi bold, let's say, and I want bold and extra bold also. Okay. So once I keep on adding these things, Google Fonts provide me this link itself. So again, I can copy this link, which is a CDN, and I can add it here in my head tag. So as I told you, inside the head tag, we use it to add all the links and all, right? Which will not be visible in the screen. No one will get to know ki, okay, that person has added these links and all, right? Just the links are being used. Okay. So this is the structure. We have made the structure for the left side. We have it. Now what we need to do, we need to add the structure for the right side. So we have done it till this part, like the HTML, the structuring part we have done. Now we'll have to add the search, offer, help, sign in, all these things, right? So how do we add them? So for this, what I'll do, I'll just create an unordered list. Okay, an unordered list with the class items. Inside this, I'm going to create li tag, okay, within which I am going to create a div, okay, and to this div, I'll give the class nav item. Inside this, now I'm going to add, if you can see, every item in the list is having two things, this SVG and this text. So first, let's add this SVG. Again, since all these SVGs are not provided by Font Awesome, so what I did, I used the SVGs of uh, Swiggy only. Again, how I did that, I just right clicked on it, and here you will be able to find the SVG. I just again right clicked on edit as HTML. I'll just select it all, copy it, and paste it inside my A tag here. So inside this A tag, I'll add my SVG. Okay, so I've added my SVG now. The next thing that I'll add is the text that we have. So for that, I'll again use a span tag. So we have this SVG. We have by mistakenly added the span. Let me remove the span tag as we don't need it. So this is one SVG we have added. Next, inside a span tag, I'll add search. Okay. So let's go back what we have right now. So we have this thing. Since it was an unordered list, therefore we have this dots, the disks that we have, and the icon and the search bar, right? Now, since we want the same things for the other items also, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to copy and paste it. How many times? We want 1, 2, 3, and 4. 4 items more. So what I'll do, I'll just copy this li part and I can repeat it, right? I need not write the code redundantly. I can just copy and paste it. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So I've pasted it. Now let's see what do we have. So okay, we have all these things. Let me change the name and SVGs for each of them. So first part was done with the first search element. Here we need to change the SVG. Let me remove the SVG. The second SVG that we require is the offers. So again, let me just right click. Let me right click here and again edit as HTML. I'll copy it. I paste it here. Next thing, I'll change it to offers, the name to offers. So now you'll be able to see the icon here changed and we have the text as offers. Again, going to do the similar thing for this help. Let me just copy the SVGs, edit HTML. I'll add the SVG here. Let me just collapse it, adding the SVG. And what we had here, we had the help, right? Next thing, we have the sign in. So again, I'm going to copy the SVG, right clicking, again, edit as HTML. So we have the HTML here. Let me change it. And what did we have? We had help. We had help. Sorry, we had sign in now. I just missed this. So we have sign in. Next, we have the cart. So let me just copy again the SVG. That's the same thing that we're going to do. Edit as HTML. And this is the last part that we are going to change. We have added the cart. And now we'll add the span. So let's come and see what do we have now. So the structure is ready, if you can see, right? We have the icon in place, the Swiggy, the home icon. Then we have this text in place. Also, we have all this nav items in the place. Now comes to the CSS. Now, what comes next? We need to add the CSS so that we are able to see these things beautifully. So now you understand if any website would have been made by just using simple HTML, it would have looked like this. That is why we require CSS so that things like this can be transformed to styles like this. But before that, do you have any questions? Okay, so what is a span tag? People are asking. Span tag, I guess you already now know. Span, you can see it yourself. So, what I did in the span tag, I added two things, if you remember, other and all this location. And can you see everything is there in the single line? A span is used to create a division only, just that when you use span tag, it is inline. Okay. So everything that you will add in simultaneously, let's say there are three spans. So you can see everything is in the same line. But if rather than using span, I'll show you if I would have used div, what would have happened? Everything would have been in the new line, because what happens in case of div, it is a block element. Whatever you will add in a new div, it is going to take a new line, it is going to start from the new line. As you can see, other was in a div, so it always starts from a new line. Bengaluru, which was earlier starting from wherever others stopped, right? It was starting from this point, but now since I've added inside div, therefore it is starting from a new line. Similar for this icon. So generally, like from point of the layouts as well as in interviews, also this question is asked. That is why I'm just taking these things into review, that what is div span, because you will read that div span both are used to create divisions. Just the difference is that div is a block element and your span is an inline element. Okay, so is this thing clear? Why have I used li? Obviously, so how do you create list items? Here I'll show you. Actually, whenever you create a nav, all these things are items only, right? List items. So that is why I have used list items, unordered list I have used. And later on, I'm going to use CSS to just update the styles and all. And you'll see that everything that I've added here, right? It is actually a li tag. Also, you will be seeing that if you just go to Swiggy's actual website, also they have used link tags only to create all these sections. Okay. So they have also used the link tags. That is why whatever guys you are going to learn today, most of it is actually I have taken reference from Swiggy so that I can explain you the things how Swiggy is actually making this design. Okay. Swiggy has also followed the same structure, the layouts that I'm showing you, ki how they are breaking things. कि div के अंदर you have one div, then you have again one div, right? So this is how they have actually again followed the same pattern. So this is how you get an insight how now what is the useful thing here? You get to know how companies are creating layouts, right? Because in good companies, obviously they are having engineers who know how to do things in a better way, right? So to see and go through their website and clone it and see what layouts they are following, that's quite good to follow the layout part. So let's move with the CSS now, right? So shall we start with the CSS and complete the navbar section? So should we start with this, the CSS? So this is the index file. What I have done, let me show you. Just focus on the layout part, guys. Always that how to break your website into divs, and try to use divs always to segregate your websites and break your websites. Why? I'll tell you next when we are going to start with CSS, so that you can maintain the display of your website quite better. So always try to use divs whenever you are breaking your website into different segments. Okay. So let's start with the CSS now. We have already attached our style.css. The first thing that I'll do is to give my whole body the margin of 0. I'll give margin 0 and padding to be 0. Okay. And I'll use the font that we had. So which font family were we using? We were using this Poppins, if you remember. So let's just copy it from here. Font family Poppins. Let me just paste it. So we have Poppins here. Now you'll see the text is converted to the style that we are using. Also, let me replace the divs with the span, which I just showed you to show the difference between span and div. So yeah, so now this thing has changed. So what you might be thinking that what is this asterisk? Asterisk is a selector. Now, as I told you, to add CSS, you are adding CSS in another file. You need to target an element, right? I want to target this particular section and I want to apply some CSS to it. For that, you need to target this element. How do we do that? Using selectors. Okay. So this is what a general syntax of CSS looks like. The general syntax of CSS looks like this. Key, you have a selector, you have the property, and then you have the value for that property. Okay. It's kind of like, for example, ki someone has given you a choice of lot of junk food that you can have. So maybe you have burger option for chow mein, and then you have option for pizza, fries, and all these things, right? So let's say you want to select one thing, right? Let's say you want to select pizza. So you will say that, okay, I want a pizza and I want toppings. What all toppings will I have? I want capsicum. Okay. This is what I want have, or maybe I want to have onion over it. Next, I want ki the size should be, let's say it should be of medium size. My pizza should be of medium size. And what should be the type of crust? It should be thin crust. Okay. So this is again what an example of CSS you might say. This is a selector basically. So if you want to select, let's say in this case, I wanted to select the whole HTML that we are targeting. So this selector is called the universal selector. Asterisk is called the universal selector. Okay. Inside this now I want key, okay, I am picking the complete body to which I want to add now these properties. Margin should be 0, padding should be 0, font family should be Poppins. This is what I'm adding. Like you choose your pizza and the topping size crust when you are ordering something. So is this clear how we add CSS? What's the syntax? Also, guys, don't worry. I'll provide the code, I'll provide the GitHub link to everyone so that you can refer to this code and it is going to be added in the description also. So don't worry on that part. So let's move with the code again. So as I told you, first thing that you're targeting is our universal, the whole body that we had. Next, we need to target our nav bar, right? So let me just inspect and show you how to do this thing. Guys, the simplest way to add CSS is using this developer tools. Let me, before adding CSS, let me show you what a developer tool is. So once you just right click on anything and click on inspect, this thing that opens, as you might know all through the class, I told you that this is a developer tool. There are so many things that you can see inside a developer tool. All the CSS that is present in any file can be seen from here, the structure of the HTML. If you want to see the CSS that is provided to any of the classes, you can see it here. Let me show you this thing. Let's say if I right click on this and I click on inspect, if I go to this thing, this other and the whole section, can you see it is having this CSS? It is having display and all these things. So you can see the CSS from this section. The styles are there. Okay. So this is a very useful section. The other things, when you start coding in JS, you learn how console is so useful. If you want to see the APIs that are being loaded, the resources that are being loaded, let's say some images might be loaded, right? Whenever your website loads. So this pane again shows you all the images that were loaded, maybe the CSS, the JS files that were loaded on your screen, the media, the font, document, everything it shows. Whatever is loaded, whatever resources are loaded, what is the performance of the website. All these things can be seen in the developer tools. And also writing CSS becomes very useful when you use developer tools. I'll show you how. So let's come here. If you see here, we need to start with styling the nav bar. So how do we target that? We target that as I told you. As I told you, ki let's say when you were trying to order the pizza, you use the selector, right? Pizza. Now I want to add styles to this navbar class. How do I do that? For adding classes as selector, we use the class name, and before that we add not this dot. Okay. So from here our navbar section starts. So I'll just comment this out. So this is my selector. This is, since this is a class, I had added it inside a class. Therefore, the selector that becomes, this is a class selector which has dot in front of it and then the class name. So inside this, if you follow what I'll do, I'll give this a box shadow. As you can see, what is a box shadow here? You can see kind of a shadow, a gray shadow at the bottom. So to give this, I'm going to give this thing a box shadow. The value will be 0 and 15 pixels, let's say. Then we have 40 pixels and minus 20 I'll give. So these are all the dimensions that are there. And I'm going to give it a color RGB, and the colors will be 40, and then we have 44, 44, 63, and slash I'll give it 15%. And also don't worry guys on the CSS. Why you might be thinking ki I know all these things, I'm just giving the CSS straight away. No, it's not like that. I had created this project earlier. That is why I have the idea of the structure, right? I have the idea of the CSS. So CSS is not something which you can learn overnight. It is with practice, and also uh, you can always refer. It's just like an hit and trial. ऐसा नहीं है कि this there is always a correct way of or any designated way for adding CSS. So you can do it yourself also. Okay, it's just a hit and trial. So you have box shadow. So can you see, once I've added this box shadow, I'm able to see kind of a grayish tint below. Next, what I want, if you see here, this particular section, this nav, is always fixed to the top. Anyway, which I scroll, it's always on the top. How do we do that? We do that using position. Okay. And what will be the value of position? Fixed. So in this case, what does position fix do? It is going to fix your nav bar, or whatever, whichever place you are adding position fix, it is going to be fixed and stable in that state with respect to the viewport. Whatever device it will be, it is going to always stay to that position, fixed to that position always. Okay, so what I have done, I have given it the position fixed. Now I want that it should have position is fixed. That I'll give it a top value of 0. I want that there shouldn't be any space from the top. So I've given it top 0. I'll give it left also 0. And from right also I'll give it 0. Okay. So now you see what is this top, left, right, all these values. So when we talk about positions, positions come with offsets. So what are offsets? Position, what does position means? It means obviously positioning or moving your item from its original place to some other place, right? Your element. So that is what a position is. So let us consider that you have this parent element, and inside this you have this child element. Now you want to move this child element to the top. Okay, so in this case what you will give, to move it to the top, you have this value called top offset values. For moving it to the bottom, you have the value bottom. Okay. To move it in the right, you have this value right. To move it in the left, you have this value left. Okay. So wherever you want to move it, move this element, you give the offset values right equals to, like in this case, what we did, we give, first thing we did was giving it a top 0. So what does it do? It takes 0 pixels from the top. That is why it gets attached to the top itself. Next, what I did, I gave left as 0, right? So what it again did, it came here and it took 0 value from left. Again I give it right also 0. So now it, what it did, it actually expanded, and from right also it took 0 pixels space. Okay, so that is how we were able to position this item. Now what will I do, let me give this a height. Let me give it a height of 80 pixels. So now the height is there. Now let me give it a background color. So I'll give it a background color of FFF, which is white. Next thing, I'm going to give it a Z index value of 1000. What is Z index? Z index is used for stacking. I want कि my nav bar should always be on the top. It should always be present. No element should overlap my nav bar. So that is why I gave this Z index to be 1000. Okay. Next, what I'll do, I'll give it a padding of 0 pixels and 20 pixels. Okay, so what does the zero mean? Zero means that I'm giving it padding of spacing, the element that is present inside. Padding of 0 pixels from top and bottom, and from left and right, I'm giving it 20 pixels spacing. Okay, so now you'll see that if I just right click here, I'll be able to see all the CSS that I've provided to this logo, to the Snapbar basically, since we have added the styles here. So if you go, whatever styles I've added, they are present here. So can you see the padding? From left and right, it is 20 pixels. If you can see the greenish portions, and the highlighted part is the content that we have. Okay. So is this clear, everyone? Okay, so what is Z index? Let me explain you what does a Z index mean. So what happens when you create elements or these tags in HTML, they stack one above another. Let's say you created a div, okay? You want that another div should be present here. Let's say you have an image in the background, okay? This is an image, let's say. This whole thing is an image. Okay, so this whole thing is an image. And over the image, you want to show the text, okay? So basically, what you want that the image should be on top, the text. This text should be on top of the image. Okay. So in this case, what will happen? You are actually creating a stack. What is a stack? You can consider it to be a stack of books. You might have seen pile of books, one after the another. You keep a book. Then when you want to keep another book, you stack it one after the another, right? You added one after the another. Correct? And if I say this is the 0th book, let's say this is the first book, this is the second book, this is the position of the book. So, second book is what you can see on the top, right? You will not be able to see from top if you are viewing, you'll not be able to see the 0th book. You'll only be able to see the second book, right? So, this is what Z index is basically. What I did was stacking. So, in Z index, what we do, Z index, it is basically stacking your elements. So just consider it to be, let's say that this was the text element. This is the text element which I talked about. And consider this is the image element. Okay. So the image element is on the back and text is what you can see above this image, the whole image. So what you need to do, you can basically say that the Z index of this will be 2 and the Z index of this image will be 1. Why? Because 1, whatever is there in the lesser value, will be in the backward space. The image is on the back side of the text. Text is above the image. So we'll give text the Z index of more value, which is 2, let's say. Right? So now the image will not be able to, like, whatever part is there behind the text, you will not be able to see that image. Correct? So this is what stacking means. When you want to stack this text over the image, but let's say you want that this image now, the text should come back and image should come in front. How to do that? This is how you can do that. Like, if that was a case of a book, what would you have done? You would have placed the first book that was below in the stack, you would have placed it upwards, right? So in the same case, I'll move the image and I'll just increase its Z index. So earlier it was 1. So let me give it the value 3. Okay. So this is how now my image will be on top and my text will be behind. So is the concept of Z index clear, everyone? Okay, awesome. So let's move next. Let's complete with the styling part of this section. So what we have the, let's target the nav now. So we have our this section, the nav. Styling this part, we have the nav section. So let us tag the nav now. Now, where is nav present inside our code? Nav is present here. So how do we get it? How do we add the selector? Since it is inside navbar, okay. So what I'll do, I'll add dot navbar. This is a selector dot nav bar, and inside that we had the nav, which was again a class. That is why I have added not nav, dot nav. And this is called a combinator selector, which is a combination of two selectors. Basically, whenever you add combination of two selectors, it is called a combinator selector. Okay, so here, since dot nav was a child to dot nav bar, that is why first I've added dot nav bar, inside which we have dot nav. That is how I've added it. So to this, what I'll give a max width of 1200 pixels. I'll give a min width of also 1200 pixels. Okay. Since if you'll go to Swiggy, right, you'll see that all these elements are taking the min and max width of 1200 pixels only. They are in the absolute center and their width is 1200 pixels. So I followed the same. I have given it the width of 1200 pixels only, the nav bar. Now what I'll do, I'll give it the position relative. Okay. What does position relative do? To any element which you are giving position relative, it is going to change its position relative to its parent. Okay. That is how position relative works. And to this, let me give a margin. I will give it a margin of 0 and auto. Using this margin 0 and auto, I'll be able to place it in between. Again, what I'll do, let me give it a height, everything a height of 80 pixels. Now, can you see everything is in center? Why? Because of the margin, first of all. Let's see the styles here. Let me click here and show you. If I would have removed the margin, can you see the things are again on that same pace? So margin 0 means that from top and bottom you are giving it 0 pixels. Auto means automatic sizing. Okay, so if you want to bring anything into the center, if you give this margin 0 and auto, things will be in center. Okay, they will automatically take the margin according to the screen size. Now what do we have? So we have added the height of this element also. Now let's give it a display flex. Now is the time. So what did we have in the nav? As I told you, we have two divs, right? And what will we use here? The display. For laying out, we'll use flexbox. And how to create a flexbox? Using, what is the syntax basically? The syntax is display flex. So this is the starting of creating our layout. And how do I create it? Using display flex. What does display flex do? It is going to bring your item to the same line, kind of a row. It is going to create a flex. What is a flex? Again, let me tell you. Flex box. This is basically flex box. A flex box is a way of laying out things. Okay. So let's say you have a main div inside which you have, let's say, these things only. You have so many cards. How do I place it one after another in this, in a single line? I do that using flex. So I have this card number 1, card number 2, card number 3, let's say. And how do I do that? Let's say that this is my parent div, okay? And inside this, I have my children div. So all these are actually child divs, okay? So what I'll do to my parent div, if I'll give a display of flex, all these elements, firstly, if I'll not give flex, all these elements will come one after another in this format. Once to this parent div, I'll give the display flex property, all of them are going to align themselves in a single row, and that is what we want. Okay. By default, what is the direction of this flex? It is always in row. So there is another property called flex direction. which is by default row. In this case, you can see if you want this to be in column, then you can just change this flex direction property to column. So you have this, you can change it to column if you want to have the things side by side. But we want things in the same line. That is why I have used display, and it helps you to create very simple layouts, and also layouts that will be more responsive. Okay. So it helps you to create layouts very easily. Okay. That is why, as you can see, what we wanted, I told you, right? We wanted that we have two divs. In this above example, what I showed you, that we have two divs, right? Now to the main parent, which was this nav, if I'll give a flex, everything will come in the same line. And that is what we have done. We have given a display flex and everything is now in a single line. Now I want space between them, all these elements. So what I'll do, there is a property called, again, let me add it here only. I'll show you how you can take the benefit of developer tools. So developer tools are used to, when you are adding CSS, you can use developer tools so that you can add your own CSS. Okay, and you need not like go back to your code, add it and see कि यार margin सही हो रहा है, padding सही हो रहा है. You can just go back to this developer tools. You can do all the experiments here, and they are temporary. How? Let me show you. So I'll add this property called justify content. Justify content is used to align your items with respect to the x-axis. So in the x-axis, I want to give some space between these two divs. So I'll give this property value space between. Now can you see the elements have space in between them? So these are the two properties. Let me show you. I added them in the developer tools. This is how you can also do it rather than adding things in your code itself. Now if I refresh this, you'll again see the things are back to normal, because everything that you add in the developer tools and that is not in your code, that is temporary. Once I add it here, now you'll be able to see it inside the developer tools also in the style section. So we have somehow created the flex. This part is done. Now let us come to the left part. This part, we need to style the left part now. So for that, what we need to target? We need to target, let's come here to this left class. This is again inside my navbar. So you can either use .navbar or .nav also, because it is inside nav. Then we'll add .left. And what will I do? Again, if you see here, I had added both these elements side by side. Like we have A and we have div here. So what I can do, again, I can give them a flex, because I want this both these items to be in the same line. So what I'll do, I'll give them a display flex. Okay. And I want that these elements, let me just save it. Now can you see both these elements are now on the same line. They are in the same row. I want these elements to be in the center with respect to the y-axis. So for that, we have the property in flex. You can use these properties, justify content and align items, when you are using flex or grid only. If you will not add display flex and you try to use align items, you'll not be able to do that. Okay. So when we use align items, what I'll do, I'll align it to center. So it will help me to align my items to center with respect to the y-axis. Okay. Next thing that I want to style is my logo. So for the logo, my logo is present inside this class. So I'll again target the class. So it is inside nav left, and inside this I have the logo, right? So let me do one thing. Let me give it the display block. Okay, it should be in one line. Let me give it the height of 49 pixels. Next, I'll give it a margin right of, let's say, 16 pixels. So I've given it a margin right. Now it has some spacing. One more thing, one more small transition that you'll see that I've added, and Swiggy has also done it. If you see, if you hover on this, right? Hover means when you move your mouse, your cursor to anything, that property is called, that thing is called hover, that behavior. So when I hover, I put my cursor on this icon, this is actually increasing its size. It's increasing its size, right? So this property, how do we add that? Let us add it in our website also, our Swiggy clone. So how will I do it? I'll add a transition property here, okay? What does transition do? It is used to add transitions smoothly, okay? So I'll add transform 0.3. I'm going to explain you what all things I'm adding here, and I'll give a value of cubic bezier, let's say. I'll give this value. Okay. So what is this transition property? It is used to add transitions to any of your property that you have. So transform in CSS is a property. Now, how do we use it? Let me just add the CSS and then I'll explain you things. So as I told you that I want that this thing should scale and become larger in size. So how do we do that? And I want everything to be done when I hover. So we do that using a pseudo class called hover. Hover is a pseudo class. Okay. Why do we call it pseudo classes? Pseudo classes are temporary. Key whenever you will hover, only at that point of time the CSS will be shown, or else it will vanish. Okay. That is why pseudo means false, temporary, right? That is why these classes are called pseudo classes. So now on this, what I'll do, I'll give transform, and I wanted to scale. Scale is a property, transform is a property which is used to give your elements some transformations in 2Ds or 3Ds, okay? And scale is the property which is used to increase the size of an element. So I want to scale this element to, let's say, 1.1. So now let me show you how it will increase its size. Can you see? Once I hover on it, the size is increasing because of the scale property. This is happening, okay? And why this is happening smoothly? Because I had given this transition property. What does transition do? It says that I want to add a transition to this transform property. For how much time? For 0.3 seconds. And the way I want it to be in a cubic bezier, this is a format. Okay, this is a small format in which I want my, since I wanted my transition to be very smooth, that is why I have added, if you can see, this is a very smooth transition that we have added. So that is why I have given this transition, and on hover I say that I want to scale it to this particular value. Okay. So I hope this is clear till here to everyone. Next, what we'll do, let's come to this section. We'll come to this section where we have all the elements now. So this was present inside our location div class, which we have. So let me just click on location div here. Let us do navbar, and inside which we have this location div. Let's add it. Now inside this, what I'll do, I'll give a display flex, okay, again, because I want everything should be in the same line, right? So I'll give display flex, I'll give it the position relative, okay? And once I do that, I want that all these elements that we have should be in. So this is the class, right? Location div. I want that all these elements should be having align items in center. They should be in center. So now we have this. We'll add the CSS one after another. Okay. So one more thing, if you see, which we need to add is to our this section. So we have our location div, inside which we have added align items to center. Next, I'll give this a margin left value. From margin left, I want that it should take 30 pixels. Okay. From height, let me give everything a height of 30 pixels. Okay, I'll give it a cursor. Cursor will be pointer. What does a cursor pointer do? That on moving to this thing, I'll be able to, you see this hand element, right? That is a pointer, nothing else. So this is what a cursor pointer does. Then I want that from margin bottom, it should take the value as margin bottom will be -1 pixels, let's say. And I want that the padding right should be 10 pixels and font size will be 14 pixels. Okay. But yeah, before that, we need to add some more stylings to these classes as well. So if you see here, let us come back to our this section, location div, and yes. So now let's add the stylings one by one. So we have added the stylings to the location div. Okay, location added. Now to this other section, I want, if you see here in this, once you click on this other, once you hover it, we have some other styles. So how to add this other CSS for the other class? We have a class name here called other. Let me just copy it. And since this is inside location div and it is other, this is how I'm going to add the selector. I'm going to give it a font weight. It is going to make this element a bit bolder. Now can you see? It is bolder now. I'll give it a color. The color that I had decided, it'll be 3D 4152, and then I'll give it a float left. This is just to move the element to the left. Now what will I do? I'll give it a padding bottom of 2 pixels and a border bottom also. A border bottom value of 2 pixels solid, and again this color I'm going to give. This is used to add borders. So now I can see this other is going to have a border. But on hover, I want to change its color. So what I'll do, again to this property, I am going to add that pseudo class called hover, right? So let me add this hover, to which I'll give the color orange, which I'm using. Let us use the color FC8019, and I'll give them a border bottom of also the same color. Border bottom of the same color. So I want it should be again 2 pixels solid and this. So now on hovering, can you see it turns to orange color, right? The next thing is your location. So let's give some styling to this location element also, the location class. So here is this location class. Let us add it here. It's inside again the location div, and location class is there inside the location div. So to this, let me again add a display block. Okay, so I've added block, and then we have font weight. Font weight is 300. Again, for making it bolder, less bold actually in this case. The padding left, I'll give the padding left to be 5 pixels, and I'll give it a margin left also. This to give some space from the left side. Okay, so from margin left, I'll give it 5 pixels margin left only. Okay, the spelling mistake is here. So we have margin left. Then I'm going to give this a certain color, which I've decided the color code will be this thing. Let me just copy the color code from here. So if you see here, this is the color code that we're using. Let me just add it here. So now can you see this is what we are having. But the only thing that is remaining here to style this arrow down. So let us style this arrow down also. Let me copy it, the arrow down class. Again, what I'm going to do, I'm going to do location div dot arrow down, and then to this I'll give a position absolute. Okay, I want to give it a position absolute, and let me show you one thing. Let me give it from the top 50% value. So now you have this thing here. Let me add the styles here so that at least you guys are able to see what I'm adding and what changes is this thing making. So when I did top 50, it is actually taking space from the top of 50%. Now I want it to have some spacing from the right. So what I'll do from right, I'll give it minus 6% because I wanted to move it in the minus of right, right? So I gave minus 6%. Then what I'm going to do, I'm going to add the transform property again. So if you see, there is this transform property and there is a value called translate y. I want to move this element to the middle. How can I do that? Using translate y. Y means for y axis. This is to place your, move your element in y axis or x axis. Okay. So since I've added currently y axis, that means whatever value I'm going to add here, this is for y axis. So here what I'm going to do, I'm going to give it minus 50%. So it is now going to come to this position. Next, what I'm going to add here is a font size. Let me give this thing a font size of 1 or 10 pixels. Let me increase this to 15 pixels. Okay. Also, let me give this a color again. What color do I give? The same as the orange one. Okay. So now let me give it some font weight. Again, I wanted to make it bolder. So I'll give 700 now. Let's copy this and add it. Okay. So I copied these values. Yeah. Now if you see, we have the things in place. Okay, I forgot the right value. So now if I give right value, so we have this thing in place. So this section is done, this left section. Now comes your right div, which we have. Okay, this is your right div. So we are done with the left div. Let me just close it. Now comes your right div. Okay, so to this right div, let's give some styling then. Moving here to the CSS again, I have the location div and the dot right, to which I'm going to give a position relative. Okay. Now, if you see, as I told you, we want all the items to be in flex, right? These are the items that we have. These are the items present inside UL. We want them to be in flex. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to target the items now, which is inside the location div dot items. And I'm going to give it the display flex again. So once I give it flex, can you let us see it? Okay, let us give this dot right and dot items. Let me see the class name. Okay, so we have items only here. So now can you see all the items are in flex. We want the items to be in center. So let me give align items and center. Again, the same properties that we used. Okay, align items center. Now, a few more stylings that we need to add is inside the li tag now. So we have the li tag. To the li tag, all these li tags which you have here. The first thing that I'm going to do is remove those dots. How to do that? I'll give the list style type as none. Okay, I'll give the none. So now can you see the dots are removed. Now some more styling that I'll add. I'll give every li item a margin right of 36 pixels, or else let me just again add all the stylings here so that you guys can visualize it. Let me go to the li. Yeah, so I've given margin right of 36 pixels. Now let me give it a color that I was already using, which is 3D and 4152. This is what I'm adding, the color that I'm giving. Now the next thing which I want is your font size, right? So we have the font size, and I'll give it a font size of 16 pixels, then a font weight of 600 pixels, or let me give it 500, right? It'll be less bold in this case. And none, I have already given the margin, right? I've already given, and this looks fine, right? So let me just copy these three values and paste it here. So the styling for the li is done. In the items, we now have the next thing. If you see, let me open one item, which is nav item. Now let us target this nav item because we need to add some stylings to them also. So we have items and then we have the nav item. To each nav item, I want that again, these elements are also in a flex. So I'll give them the display flex. Okay. And I'll align the items again in center. Again, let me give the padding left to be some value as 28 pixels. So you see they have the spacing from the left now. I'll give them a position relative, a height of 80 pixels. Okay. And I gave them a height. So now they are in center with respect to the height. Now, the next thing, I'm going to give each of them a cursor pointer. That once you hover on them, you'll be able to see this cursor, right? Now let us style the elements that are present inside this A. Okay, so let us style them. So how to style them? Again, since nav item was having A inside it, the A tag, okay. So to this also, I'll give a display flex. I'll give align items to be in center. That both these things, the icon as well as the word that is there should be in center. I want to remove this underline from here. So how do I do that? I do that using text decoration none property. And I give it a color. Let me again give the same color to it, which I was using primarily. And now let me give it the font size of 16 pixels. Okay. So now we are mostly done, but some styling is still left here. What is the styling? If you see on hover, I want that these should turn out to be orange. So for this, I'll again add key on hovering it. On hover, the color should turn to this color. So now if you see, the text is transforming into this color. Let me give a font weight also to all these items. Let me give a font weight of 400 to each of them. Yep, that's fine. And also to the span tag, this tag I want to give some spacing. So what I'll do, as you can see, we have the span tag inside the A tag. That is what I'm doing. Dot nav item, then A, and inside this I have span. So that is what I'm adding here. Dot nav item A and then span. So what I'll do, I'll give it a padding left of 11 pixels. Okay. So this is what I am doing. Now let's match it. So we have something similar right now. We are able to construct our own Navbar of Swiggy. So this is quite similar to what we have here, right? We have things going like this. Now, shall we move to our next section, which is the content and the main section? There are many things to learn from this section. A very fruitful section this will be, which is the content section. So, should we move to this section, guys? I added the absolute because I wanted that element should be present always there. That is why I added absolute. I wanted to absolutely position that element with respect to its spin. That is why I added absolute there. Okay. So, guys, should we move to our next section? If you guys are ready, great. So, let's move on. So, in this section, also, you can see that we have the section can be again broken into two divs primarily. The first div will be this thing where you have all this content here on the top, which is 1473 restaurants, the number of restaurants, then you have the relevance and all these filters basically that you have there, right? And below to it, you have all these cards that are present. So ultimately, you have two divs here also. First will contain all this section, this one, and next is going to contain all your cards and all. Okay, these cards, let me call them cards, okay, or the restaurant list basically. This section is going to contain your what? The restaurant list. So now what we are going to do, we are going to again divide this complete section into two divs. So let's do that. So what do we have? How are we going to do it? Let me go back to the CSS HTML again. Now since the header is done, let's move on. Let's give this main class a class called content section. Okay. So we have the content section inside which I'm going to create a section called restaurants with the restaurants. Okay. So we have the restaurants. Inside this, I am going to create two divs as I told you. First will be what? First, we are going to have our inside this container I'm going to create it. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a container. Okay. And inside this, I'm now going to create two things. First will be my div, which I'm going to give the class as item bar. Okay. First will be my item bar, this thing, which is going to be a list of all the items or maybe the filter bar and all kind of thing. And the second thing which I'm going to have is my div dot list, let me say. Okay. So these are the divs which I have primarily divided my this section into. This is a whole section which is divided into two divs, the first div and the second div. So let's style this first div first of all, and then we are going to create all these cards one by one. Okay. So for doing that, let's start with this item bar. Inside this, as you can see, what do we have? Let me call this as the number of restaurants maybe. And these are the filters that we have. So what I'm going to do inside this item bar, I'm going to add all of them inside a div. Let me call it number. Okay. And let me give it this number of 1473 restaurants. And then let me give this div relevance. Okay. I'm going to have similar divs and the value will be relevance. Okay, let me just copy and paste it. How many times? 1 2 3 4 times. Okay, so let me just paste it 4 times. 2 3 4. Okay, Now let me change the values. So it was relevance and relevance. Next was the delivery time, right? Next we had rating. Next we had cost, low to high. And then we have cost, high to low. High to low. Okay. I changed the class names. Let me make it delivery. Let me make it rating. Let me keep the name as cost, low to high, cost LH. Okay. And let me give it the class. Sorry, did I create one more unnecessarily? Okay, okay, okay. Let me add a div here again, and the div will have the class, let's say cost HN, and inside this I'll add the value. So let's see what do we have right now. So we have the section, most of it has actually gone below. So no worries, let's style this part. So let's come to the styles. First thing that we need to target is this container, because everything is present inside this container, which is inside the restaurants class. So how do I target it? So now is my content section. All the CSS that I'm going to add here is for the content section. So here I add restaurants, and then I have the container. Okay. So I have the container. To this also, I'll give a max width of 1200 pixels. Sorry, we give 1200 pixels, and a min width of also 1200 pixels. So now you can see position. Let me give it again a position relative. Okay. So we have no changes as of now, but yes, since we want it to be margin, so if you remember what we did for making things in margin, I gave it 0 and auto, right? So this is how we bring it in the center. So let me give it some part, or let me just do one thing. Let me again add all the stylings here so that you guys can see it. So I'm adding the classes inside the container. So what I'll do, I'll give it a padding top of 42 pixels. Okay, padding top I've added. From the top, let me give it 80 pixels. In the background, I'll give it the color white, and from the left, let me give it spacing of 31 pixels. So let me add all these values now. Here. So okay, we have the section. Now we want all these items in a single row. How do we do that again? You remember the display flex? Where to add this display flex? Inside this item bar, because item bar is the parent element and we want its children elements to be in flex. So let's target this item bar. I'll add dot container and dot item bar, inside which I'm going to give it the display flex, and your I want these aligned items to be in center. Okay, so I want them to be in center from x-axis also and from y-axis also. So for giving it center, or from x-axis, I want that they should have, can you see? Now they're in same row, but I want that some spacing should be there in between them. So what I'll do, I'll give justify center as space between. So now you can see all the elements space. Also, we missed adding one thing. All these divs will be inside one div, since we want to segregate them. So they'll be inside the filters div. Okay. Now when I add it, you'll see that these elements, this element is on the left and this element is on the right. Okay. So this part is done. The filters are there on one place on the right, and this element is here on the left. So let's style this element first, the numbers, if you remember. So this is the number class. Let me target this number class. So it is inside the item bar and we target the number, to which now let's add the stylings. So I'll give it a font weight of 600, right? I'll give it a font size of, let's say, 28 pixels. Then I'll give it a color. The color will be, let me use a new color, which is 28, and let us use the same color, 3D one. So we have this color. Now what I'll do, I'll just give it a margin top. So the margin top value will be -3 pixels. I just wanted that it should take some minus spaces from the top. That is, I have given it margin top and this -3 value. Okay. Now, what else do I'm going to do? I want that if you can see, there is this element that is present here. So what I'm going to do inside this item bar, we have this item bar. To this, we are going to use the pseudo element now, and I'm going to add the pseudo element after to this. Let me give it the color of 3D, this value, and then I'll give it a position of absolute. I'll show you what I'm actually trying to create with this after, and then I'll explain you in the content. I want that it should be absolutely empty. Okay. And from left, I want it to be 0. From right also, I want it to be again 0, the offset. And from top, I want it should take 81 pixels, right? And I want to give it a height of 1 pixels. And a background color, I'll get a background of E9E9EB. Okay. So let me show you what I was actually doing. So this is just nothing. This is a bar that I am trying to add after this element. That is why I have added item bar after. Okay, so it is having a color, a position, a content, left, right. Okay, and from top we have given some value and we have given it a height of 1 pixels. Okay, so this is what we have done. Now let's do one thing. To all these filters also, let's add the styles. So let's come here to the filters. If you remember, it had this class called filters, right? Let's complete this section fast so that we can move with the card section, which will be quite interesting. So what I want, to all these filters also, I'll give a display flex, right? So to all these filters also, which is inside your item bar, then you have filters. To all of them, I'll give display again flex, because I want them to be in the same row, and align items, I want them to be in center. So that is why I'm giving align items center. So now can you see all items are in center and this looks good. This is what we were wanting. And some more styles we want to add to all these div elements. We want to give some spacing, if you see. So how to add that spacing to all these divs? I'll again target dot filters, and with me I'll target the div. Okay, all the divs. To all these divs, I'll give a font size of 10 pixels. Let me give the font size of 16 pixels, and then a font weight of 300. I'll give some colors also. Color again, I'm going to use this. Let me use a light color, this one, and I'll give them a margin left. Since if you see that there is no spacing currently, so I'll give a margin left value to each of them. So we have margin left, right, of 35 pixels. Now you see it's having the spacing. I'll give it the cursor also. I'll give it the cursor pointer. So now when I move here, it is having this cursor pointer. But I also want that we again have, when I hover on it, it should have this thing. Can you see? this border in the bottom section. So how do I do that? Again, let me show you using this after filter only, just that I'll add both the things, the pseudo class as well as the pseudo element. So what I'll do to this div, I'll add hover, that on hovering, after that, just add all these values. So I'll give the color as 3D and this color I'll add. Then I'll give the position as absolute. I'll give the content. So what does content do? Content inside which whatever content you're going to add, that is going to take place. Let me just add this. So if you will see here now, if I would have added content here instead. So can you see this df here? So whatever content you want to add inside this after element. So these are again temporary elements, okay? So if you want to add any content, you can add that. Or else I want it to be empty. That is why I've given this. Again, I'm going to use the same values. I'll just change them. Background color, want to be this. I want it to be 2A2 and C3F. These are color codes which I had already used. That is why it is nothing again that which I have learned, right? So these are the color codes which Swiggy is actually using. That is from where I have used these color codes from. Okay. So I'll give it a height of again 1 pixels. From top, I'll give it 31 pixels. Okay. Left, right, I'll give 0 pixels, and that is the background that we have. So now if I save it, you are able to see this. Let us change the value from hover after. So we have hover after the position, the content we have, the left and right we have added correctly. Okay, I think we need to add it somewhere inside these elements. So it is inside each div that it is adding. So let us do one thing. Let us rather give this element on hover. Let me give it a background of this. Let me just comment them out. And I want that it should take a border bottom of 1 pixels solid and this color. Okay. So this is what I want. Every element that on hover, this thing should happen. Let me remove this after from here. Now if you see, we are able to see this thing. Let me add some padding from bottom and this should work fine. But yeah, let us give it 2 pixels of border bottom. Okay, so that is fine. Now let's come to the section wherein we have, I hope this is clear everyone. If you have any doubts in this case, okay, what is the difference between REM and EM? So, Shiv, REM is responsive again, and EM. So, when we use measurement units, try always to use the units which are not absolute, which are relative. So, relative units are the ones. Let me give an example. For example, pixels. Okay, you use pixels, right? So, pixel is absolute. Like, for example, if you are using your pixels in different screens, in large screen as well as in small screen, so 16 pixels will always remain 16 pixel in whichever device you are going to use it. But if you will use the same, like if you add 16%, then your, let's say, font size is going to be responsive. It's going to be relative to the viewport, the device width that it is having. It is going to take 16%. It will become smaller when you will see it in your mobile screen in comparison to what you will see in your laptop screen. So they are adaptive according to the screen size. That is the same difference between REM and EM. EM is absolute and REM is a responsive unit. Okay, RGB is a format of giving colors: red, green, blue. This is the three things using which every color is made. So RGB is just a way of giving colors. Difference between pseudo and normal. Pseudo is again when you want to add any item before or after, right? These are pseudo elements. Pseudo classes are the ones which I told you, like hover. Key on hover, you want that this class should be present, or else you don't want that this class should be present, right? This is what hover pseudo means. Other CSS you can see it in the screen, but hover you can only see when you have a temporarily, basically you can see when you hover on a screen. So that is the case. Next, move on to our next section, which is quite very crucial, right? Which is very crucial section. So let's start with that section, because with this section you are going to learn a lot of things. So let's come to this section. I'll create one card first, and then we are going to copy replicate that card everywhere. Okay, these number of times we can just replicate. Okay, so the main task, whenever you see that okay there are so many similar cards, first try to create one card and then just replicate it elsewhere. Okay, so let us create that. So if you see this particular section also, let us talk about only one card. So in this section you will be able to see you have this whole card inside which you have this image section is there. Next section which I can divide it into is this section, wherein you have the um, name of the place, right? Name of the restaurant, the things that it provides. Next, I can again break it into the next div, wherein I can see the ratings, the amount of time it is going to take. And again, the next thing, I'm going to break it into this welcome, the offer section, and the quick view. Okay, so this is how I'm going to break this div. So let us create this div. How do we do that? Let me come back to the HTML again, and I'm going to add everything inside my restaurant list. So inside this, let me create a div with the class place. Okay, and I'll add an a tag inside which I'm going to add everything that is present inside this whole div. Okay, I'm going to add it inside my a. Why? Because if you'll see here, I want that on clicking, if a user clicks on any place, he should be redirected to that particular what you say, that is the functionality in Swiggy, that if you click on any of the divs, it should redirect to that particular page, let's say to the waffle tea page. So that is why I'm adding all the content that is there inside this a tag. So what I'll do, let me provide it the link. So let me give it the link as this. Now also let me give it the class called place link. Okay, so you have this. Next, inside this we have, let me create a div called list item. Okay, so you have this list item. So what I'll do, inside my list item now, I'll add all my item contents. So let me create again a div. Let me just bring it here. Let me move this here, and inside this div, what I'll do, I create another div and let me call it item content. Okay, item content. Inside this, I am going to add the div inside which I'm going to have my image that was inside on the top. If you see this image, so again, let me inspect it and use this image. This is again an SVG. So I'm going to copy this, edit as HTML. I'll copy this and I'll paste it here in image. Inside image, I have this. So I'll add an image here. Yeah. So we have this image. Let's see what do we have now. Okay. So we have an image, right? The next thing that we should do, let us see here. Let me show you. the content here. So if you can see, we next have a status, right? We'll add the status bar here. Next, we'll have a place this name div, then the info div, then the offer div, and outside this, I'll add the quick view. Okay, so let us now add the which div. So we are done with the top image div. Okay, let me close it. Next, let's add the div with status. Okay, so we have this div with status in which we are going to add some internal styles. What all styles will it be? Let me use these styles that you can see here. So I'll use this styles. Oops, where did it go? Okay, let me go ahead to the promoted. Let me click on inspect. So if you see, they have used this internal CSS. I'll just use this internal CSS as well. Okay, I'll add it as it is. Now, what we do, we add a small thing inside this div, which will be a div only. Okay, I'll give it the name called status title. Status title we have as the name. Inside this, let me add the value promoted. Okay, so we have the section also. You'll see, you can see this whole promoted kind of thing present here. Next div that we need to create is your place name div. Okay, so I'll create another div with a class called place name div. Okay, inside which I'm going to add the name of the place, which is this waffle. Oops, I clicked on it, so it'll be waffle D. Let me just add it waffle and B, right? Now, what do we have? We have the next part, which let me call it is the food items that we want to add. So let me just copy all the food items from here again. We had this. Let me add the food items that we have. Let me again edit it as items, and let me add the another div that we have, and I have given it the class called food items. So now we have this word waffle D and all the items that are present here. Next, we are again going to create, if you see, another div that we have, which is going to be our info div. So let me close this place div. Let me again create a div called info div. Okay, inside this info div, what all things do I have? I have the rating, I have this dot again which I have used. Okay, I have this value and 200, all these things. So what I'll do, I'll just use this dot from here somewhere. So I'll just use this dot. Inside this, I'll add the rating first. Okay, inside the rating, what I'm going to do, if you see inside the rating again, we have two things. We have this icon and we have the number. So I'll add a span tag here. Okay, and I'll give it the clause called icon star. Okay, and inside this, what I'm going to do, let me add this first. I'm going to use a font awesome icon, the star icon. So let me search for the star icon. So you have the star icon here. Let me just copy the star. I'll copy it from here and I'll add it inside this span. Next, I'm going to create one more span tag wherein I'm going to add that rating, which was 3.8. Okay, so it is 3.8. Let's see what do we have. Okay, we have the star and this 3.8. Next, we have another div in which we are adding the time it will take. Okay, so it is 44 mins. Then again, we have this div. So I'll add it. And next, what do we have? We have this 200, the amount that is there, rupees 200 for two. So let me just again use it, because that rupee simple is hard to make. So I'll just copy it from here and add it. So now we have all the elements in place. The last thing that we need to add is this section also. So info div we have created. Now we need to create the offer div. So let's close the info div here. I'll create the div now, which let me call it the offer div. Okay, inside the offer div, what I want, I again want a span whose class, let me give the class as icon offer filled. And inside this, I'm going to use another icon, which is the discount icon. Okay, which is the tags icon basically. So since I wasn't having the same icon as Swiggy was using, I have used this tags icon instead. Okay. And now what I'm going to do with this, I am going to add that value inside another span, and I'll call it offer text. Okay. Inside this, I'm going to add key 15%, 50% off and all these values. So let me just click on here and we have this value. Let me just again copy this and paste it here inside the offer text. Okay, so let's see now what do we have. We have all the elements in place, just that the last thing that we need to create is this quick view. Okay, so quick view will be outside this div. So we have one item container. If you see here, we have item content, and outside that we have, let me just close this. So you'll see next we have this quick view. So I have closed the item content. Now I am creating the quick view. Okay, so inside this quick view, now what do we have? We are going to add this content, obviously quick view, and let me add it inside a span. So I'll add span and I'll give it the class called quick view, and this will have another, so sorry, let me just give it to be a span. Okay, this class is having span. Let me give this a class called view button. Okay, view button, let me give this and let me give it a uh, yeah, that is fine. In this I'll just add quick view. So I'll add quick view. So that's all. This was all a part of the CSS. So thankfully, our this card is also done. We are done with the HTML. Sorry, we are done with the HTML. Now comes the heavy CSS that we need to add. Okay, but in this HTML, was anything confusing or anything you guys want to ask? Please tell me. Guys, once we complete this section, after this, I guess like we'll take half an hour more, and this should be complete by then. Okay, I'll provide you with a complete code. Don't worry, I have uploaded it on Git, so you guys can like take the reference from there. So no worries. But yes, I guess for getting the certificates, you should be present in the session and you have to submit the project, I guess. So you need to complete the project, that is must. And obviously, most importantly, you are here to learn things, and all these things are actually this course, HTML, CSS, Bootstrap, and the front end. So AccioJob takes all these top notch languages that are being used. So let me tell you, in front end technologies, there are languages like HTML, CSS, Bootstrap, and React. JavaScript is the main language which is used in for front end. Okay, so these are the technologies which you require if you want to apply as a front end dev. And for back end devs, you have languages like Node, Python, but most of the product based companies, the best companies, they use Java, Spring Boot as their backend languages. So all these languages are being taught by AccioJob already, and they're doing great. I've been working with them and giving. This is my first session though, as a live session on YouTube. But yeah, I have been myself been into both these phases, like where um, like learning the front end, and also currently I'm in my company also, I work in both front end as well as back end. So working both as a front end as a back end dev in all these technologies. So that is how, when I was in my times, I used to learn through all these courses, and still I'm learning always, never, it's never ending. But yeah, so that is how like you can. So this was just a demo of how we take classes, and these are the sessions which are actually, when we take classes, these are divided into 2 3 classes, but since it was a whole session on YouTube, that is why it is going to take some time to complete, since we are doing it in a stretch, and this is a big website, I would say, right? So let's go with the CSS part now. Okay, let's go with the CSS part. So now you see there is a lot of CSS involved in this whole section. So let's start with it. Let's start with this section where we had the restaurant link. So let me just add restaurant list here, sorry. So in the restaurant list, the thing that I'll do, I'll give everything. Also, just let me show you one thing. Once you are able to create this place, you can just copy it and paste it multiple times. Let me paste it 4 times as of now. Okay, let me show you. Now you have all these elements, but they are in this format, one after another. How to change them? Previously, I was using display flex, but now for this kind of a section, I'll use display grid. Now, how to create a grid? Let me show you. And what is a grid? Grid is a 2D structure made up of rows and columns. So if you see here, we have both rows and columns also, right? So in this case, I'll use display grid. Okay. So how to make a grid using display grid, but apart from that also, let me show you. So I've added display grid, but it's of no use currently. Why? Because now I need to tell the number of columns that are required. For that, we have this grid template columns, to which I'll give that repeat 25%. That I want 4 columns, and each of them should have 25% of width. Now, can you see? They are in the same line and they have this width. If I would have copy pasted the same thing multiple times, also, right? Let me just do it for you guys. Let me copy all the places and paste it again. So now can you see we have 8 items and all of them are in the form of a grid. How will we able to do that? By creating a column. So I wanted that I should have 4 columns, basically each of them, since anyways the width of a screen is 100%. So if you are making 4 columns, so 4 divided by 100 will be 25%, right? That is why I have given the width of each element to be 25. And what does repeat do? This is going to give 25% 4 times. That is what it is doing. Okay, now I'll give every item a justify content. It also has this property justify content. I'll give them space between, because I want these elements to have some spacings in between them. I'll give them some margin from bottom, and I'll give them margin bottom of, let's say, 80 pixels. Then I'll give them padding from top, and it will be 39 pixels, and a margin also from top. I'll give some margin also from top. Let me give it 25 pixels. Okay. Now can you see? And also let me tell you what why I have given margin top also. And you might be thinking padding top also. So padding and margin are different. Margin is the spacing from the border to your the space between the outer of the element and the border. Okay. What is padding? The spacing between the content of the element and the border. That is called padding. So let me show you in the restaurants list. Let us come here. So what I did, I gave padding top 39 pixels. Let me just reduce it. Can you see? This is what padding does. And what is padding top doing? It is going to increase the orangish part that you can see. It is increasing the margin. And what is the difference? Let me show you. So this is a box model. Whatever content you have, can you see? This is the content. This is the width, 1200 pixels, and the height is 906. Padding, since we had given 45 pixels padding, if you see, and that is what it is showing, that on the top you have 45 pixels padding, but on the left, right, bottom, you don't have that. You have added no borders, you have added margin. From top you have given 37, from bottom you have given 80%. So this is how you can again visualize these things with the use of developer tools. Okay. So this is one thing. Next, moving forward with this, now let us concentrate on the things one by one. Let me open one of the places so that I can show you what we are going to target next. So we have this place link, right? Let us target this place link. So it is inside your restaurant link list. Inside this, you have your place list. So I'll give everything a background of white. Okay. I'll give the display to be block. Once I give everything the display block, now can you see everything takes a new line? Okay, because of display block. I'll give the text decoration as none because everything was inside an A tag. That is why it is taking that underline. So when I do text decoration as none, now no decoration is there. I'll give it the color and I'll give the value as inherit. So whatever its parents were having the color as, it has taken the same color. Now let's come to the items one by one. So we went inside the place, then inside the place we had the place link. Now let's go to the list item. Okay, so we have the restaurant list, and inside which we have the list item, right? To this, what I'll do, I'll give a padding from top of 25 pixels, from right I'll give it from sorry, left and right I'll give it 25 pixels, and from bottom I'll give it 57 pixels. So if you see here, now there is some padding in between the elements. I'll give them a border of 1 pixels and solid of white. Okay, and I'll say that contain the content. What does this value do now? Contain content. So if you see here, contain, it's going to like keep the document. If you see, indicates that an element and its contents as much as possible independent of the rest of the document tree. That is, I have added the contain content. I'll show you if I'll remove it, what will happen. Okay. So now I want that on hover, if you see, I want this thing. A border should be there and a box shadow is there. So what I'll do, I'll add hover property, if you remember, right? So I'll add this hover property here, and what I'll do, let us remove the spacing. So inside this now, I'll give a border color to be D3D5DF. Okay, I'll give this color now. That on hover, this should happen. Now can you see it is having this? But for the box shadow, let me show the box shadow. So what they have done to the list item on hover, when I do hover, it is giving it this box shadow. So let me just copy this value of box shadow. Okay, this is the width, that from top, then right, from bottom, from left, what all values you want, and what is the color. This is the width, ki box shadow ka what width you want, and this is the RGB, the color scheme that you want to occur. So can you see, now we have something similar. So these boxes are, it's hovering and it is taking that much space. Now let us give some width to these contents. How to give that? Let's come inside the list item. So inside the list item, we have the item content, right? So to every item content, so we have this dot item content. So to this item content, we'll give them a width of 254 pixels. Okay, and I'll give them the position relative again. So now you see they have some width, some designated width that is there. Now let us come to the elements that are there present inside this element one by one. Okay, once we are able to do this, this section will be absolutely done. After this, we'll have the footer section, which is very, very, very simple. Okay, so this was the most crucial section that we were having. So focus on this, how I'm doing things, because in this you are going to learn many things, right? Many new concepts will be there. So you have the item content. Next, you have the stop image, if you remember. Let me show you here. So you have the top image. Now let's go to the stop image. And so you have top image, right? What I'm going to do, I'm going to give it a background I'm going to give it a background color, and let me give it a value of FOF. Sorry, it will be 0F5. Okay. Next, I'm going to give it a width of again 254 pixels and a height of 160 pixels. And also I'll give it a position relative, right? Now comes the opacity of this image. So for this images, what I'll do, the opacity of the image, there is a property called opacity. And how do I add that to the image? Using this opacity. So opacity value stands from 0 to 1. I'll give it 1. If I would have given it 0, can you see it is not having anything? So it is completely opaque when you give it 0. When you make it 1, it's actually it's transparent. And if you can give it value from 0 to 1, if I give it 0 to 5, you'll see that it is quite having a layer of gray over it, right? Translucent kind of. So let us make it like this. This looks good. Now let's come to this section, which was the status section. This, the promoted one. We wanted to act like a label like this. Now, how to do that? This is tricky. Just see this. It will help you in adding this kind of a thing in other projects also. So how do you do that? I'll first target the status class that is there. We have the status class, right? This class status. So I'll give it a position absolute. Okay, I'll give it a position absolute. Now see, just taking the position absolute from left, what I'll do, let me give the stylings from here only so that you guys can see it properly. So now from left, I want, let me give it 8 pixels, minus 8 pixels. Why? Because if you see here, this promoted is on the left side of this image. So that is why I've given left of minus value. Okay. Next, if you move, I want that from the top, it should take value 0. Okay. Now can you see? So this part is done. Color. What color do I want to give that element? I want the color of the text should be white. I guess it's already white. Okay. So now the next thing that we need to add is font size. So let me add font size. Let it be 13 pixels. Okay. Font weight. Let me give a font weight to it. Font weight, let it be 500. I want that the text should be in uppercase. So how can I do that? Using text transform uppercase property. Now can you see it has this values. I'll give it some padding. The paddings that I want to give is 5 pixels, 9 pixels, and 4 pixels, let's say. Okay. So this is what we have. And also let me give it a max width of 50%. So max width of 50%. So this is what we wanted. Almost we are done. If I tell you one thing that is remaining, which is kind of a task for us, is this thing that is present on the left. How do we make this? We make this again using pseudo elements, and I'll show you how. Let me add before. So anything which you want to add before a particular section, you use before. And you want to add it after on the right side of the section, you use after. Okay. So let me show you how will I add this thing. So it is having a before here. Okay, first let me add one thing. Let me add a position again. Absolute I'll give to this element also. And I'll give a border width. I'm going to create this using a border, basically, nothing else. This triangle kind of a structure, I'll show you how. If I do 9 pixels, 0 pixels, 0 pixels, and 9 pixels, it is going to create a kind of an element for me that I'll show you. Currently, why aren't we seeing the absolute? Okay, wait. So we have this dot status and before I'll show you. So I'm using this using the border width. Let me give it bottom minus 9 pixels. Okay, because I want that on the bottom of that status bar, right? I'll give it a content which is empty. Next, I'll give it a width, a normal width of 0, a height of 0. Okay, border style. Since I've given a border width, so I want a border style to be solid. Okay, and let me give the border color to be inherit. Whatever the parent was having, it is going to inherit that color. And from the left also, let me give 0. Now, can you see it is having this? How? Let me show you. So now let me explain you everything. So border width. If I wouldn't have given this, this won't have been possible. How is this present here? Because of the absolute. What is the absolute? If I'll increase the value of border bottom, it will move like this. So that is I have kept it minus 9. And width, height of all these things, border style solid. So if I would have made it dashed, then then the scene would have been a bit different. I wanted it to be solid only. That is why I've added this thing. Okay. So the most how to make this the most important two things that were this border, this bottom width, and this absolute. These are the three properties using which we were able to create this thing. Okay, the promoted. So now this part is also done. Let us style this part now, which is your place name div. So what I'll do, I'll take up this class called, let us come inside div. So we have place name div now, right? I'll take it and I'll copy and paste it inside this section, place name div, to which I'll give a margin top of 14 pixels. Okay, so now it is taking a value of margin top, which is 14 pixels. To this thing inside this, we have a name. So let me give it, inside this we have the name property. Now let's style the name property. So what I'll do, I'll give it a font size of 14 pixels again. Okay, I'll give it a font weight of 500 and I'll use this word break. Okay, and break word. I'll tell you what this does. A very important concept it is, break word. Okay, let me show you. So let's say if this would have been a very long text, okay, this waffle D, if it would have been like this, let me show you. It does like this, and let me add something like this, very long. Let me keep it like this. So now since you had added word break word here, that is why it is breaking. But if you won't have added it, it would have just taken one line only. Okay, so it is kind of a word wrap kind of a feature which we are adding here, a word wrap kind of a feature. Next thing that we have here is for the food items, this thing class. So let me add dot place name div, and then we have food items. Okay, inside which let me do one thing. Let us go to this class because these are small styles that we have added, so won't waste much time on the CSS for these parts. So let's copy it from here and I'll paste it here itself. So now you'll see we have this section. We have the classes done, the CSS intact. Next thing is the info div, which is important. So now please focus here. Next thing which we have is the info div. To this info div, again, I'm going to give a display flex because I want everything to be in a flex, and I'll give the align items as center. So now you see this div, this thing is in a straight line, right? And also, can you see, as soon as we are adding the styles to these classes, the style for everything is getting changed. Why is this happening? Because that is the feature of using classes and IDs. Since we used classes for all these cards, that is why we just need to change the CSS once, and then it is being rendered at all the places. Okay, coming back, info div. So let me give it the margin top. I want to give it a margin top value of 18 pixels. I'll give it a font size of 12 pixels. Justify content, I want space in between, so I'll give space between. I'll give them a color of 535665. Okay, this is the color I want to give them, and I'll give them font weight. Font weight will be 300, let's say. So we have the 300 font weight. Now let's give some styling to this ratings. Okay. So again, it will be inside info div, and the class name is rating, right? It is rating. If you see, let me go inside this section. You have rating. So to this rating, again, let's add some styling. Since again the stylings are quite basic, so what I'll do, I'll check the styles from here and add it straight away so that we don't miss the styles of the important sections. We have just added background color, and again I have given this flex and align items, which is quite not new to you guys now, right? Everyone knows about flex items and all these things now. So we have this thing in place. Also, now what we want, so this part is also done. Let's give some styling to this icon star that we have, some placement. So to this icon, I'll give a font size of 10 pixels. Okay, I'll give it a margin right because there was no spacing from the right. So I'll give it margin right of 4 pixels and position relative. And from top, I'll say that it should take at least -1 pixels. Okay, that was the issue. So now this looks good. Next thing we need to give styling is to this section, the offer div. So let's do it very quickly and we'll be able to complete this section as well. So we have offer div, to which I'll give, let's do one thing. Let's again just use the stylings, because again, these stylings are very normal. So what I'll do, I'll just use the stylings from here, since this is what I had created. So inside the offer div, we have this, wherein I have just added a border top, the padding, margin, colors, again display and align items, and this thing. So if you see here, I've given it this thing, but we still want some spacing for this icon, right? We want some spacing here. So for that, what I'll do, inside this offer div, we had an icon called icon offer filled, if I remember it correctly. So it is this thing, this icon that I'm talking about, this section. So let us give it a font size of 16 pixels, okay, a width of 20 pixels, a height of 16 pixels, and then a margin right of 4 pixels. Okay. Now you'll see some spaces there in the icon. To the text also, we'll give some values. So let me just take it from here again. So in the offer text, we have offer div inside which we have the offer text, to which what I'll do, I'll give it a font weight of 400, and I'll give it font size of 14 pixels, and I'll give it a line height of 1.2. Oops. Sorry, it will be line height and it will be 1.2. Cool. We got that thing now. To this tag, we still need to give some styling. So what I'll do, I'll just give this thing so inside the offer text, we have this if tags which is present here if you see. So inside your offer text, okay, we have added it upwards. Let's remove it from here. Yeah. So if you'll see here from the margin top, it is having some value, and I guess let me just use this name. Okay. So from margin top, let me give it minus 2 pixels. So let me give it minus 7 pixels from the top. Let me add it here. Now we need to give some styling to this quick view. Okay, so what will I do here? I want that the case here, what is happening here, ki whenever you are hovering, you want to see the quick view in that case only. So what will I do? I'll say that when you hover, place the whole card, when you hover it, then quick view, this div, the visibility of this should be visible, and I'll make it important. Okay, so I'm saying ki on hover of the place, the quick view should be visible. Now let's see. But in other cases, we want it to be hidden. So what I'll do, we'll give quick view, and to this we'll give the color that it has, which is 6, 8, 7, 6B78. 6B and 7, 8. Okay, so it has this color, and the font size is 13 pixels. I want the visibility to be hidden. Okay, it has this. Also, there are few more things that I'll just take the reference from here quickly so that we don't waste much time again on this, on styling the parts that we already know about. Right, since we know all these values already, the meaning of all these values, that is why I'm just using them. Now you will see here, once I am hovering on it, I'm able to see the quick view, but still we need to transform this view button here inside this. So what I'll do, I'll just target this. We have view button class present. I'll give it the color blue, which we have. So the color that I'm using is 5D ED, sorry, it will be 5D8 ED5. Yeah, that is fine. The display, I'll give it display block. Okay. Now, if you see it's still on this place, I want it to be in caps. So for that, again, if you remember, there is this property called text transform, text transform. I'll give it the value of upper case. Okay, but I want it to be in middle. So I'll give text align to be center, and I'll give the font weight to be 600. Now is it's in center. Can you see, once I hover on it, I'm able to see this. So at this section is also done. Finally, we have completed this section also. So this is as expected as he wanted. Now comes our very last section, guys. This is going to be quite quick. But before this, I wanted to ask you if any doubts you guys are having. Google form is not working? Okay, let me check with the management if they can provide the correct link. Okay, so the Google form is not working, right? So I've just asked the concerned people, they'll check, okay? Now let's come to our. Okay, first, before that, I was asking, can you please tell me the doubts or. So, okay, guys, don't worry about the Google form. I just checked with the team. So they said they are working on it. They'll provide you the correct link very soon. Okay. But yes, before that, any doubts you guys are having before moving on? Tell me if you guys are having any doubts and any things, any property you did not understand. You guys can tell me about the property. No, currently it is not responsive because for making the website responsive, we need to add media queries, right? So currently I haven't made it responsive. You need not remember it, Amit, because as I told you, CSS it is hit and trial. Why am I able to write all the CSS by myself? It's not that I have remembered the CSS. It's just that I had created this website before also. That is why I know that okay, these values are fine. Okay. So it's always hit and trial in CSS. Yes, and currently it is only in front end, obviously, since HTML CSS is front end, right? Okay, display absolute. So what happens in display absolute? It is going to position your element absolutely with respect to the parent. So what happens when your position is relative? Relative is when you want to move your element relatively with respect to the main case, you can move it. But absolute means that if there is a parent, let's say there is a child element, you want to position is absolutely with respect to the parent. So in that case, what you do to the parent element, you give a display of relative and you make the display of the child element as absolute. Okay, so positioning, let me tell you the position of concept also, how does it work. So what are positions? In positions also, let me say for example, let's say you guys are friends standing, uh, three friends are standing. Okay, let's say a person is standing here. Okay, a person is standing here, then B is standing here, and C is standing here. Okay, so now it depends on C how he describes his position with respect to A and B. He might say that I am standing to the right of the A element when he considers that I am standing in right with respect to A's position. He can also say I'm standing in the left with respect to C's position, right? So this is how positions work. They every element takes position with respect to some other element. Okay, so when I'm saying the display is absolute, it means its position is there itself. Okay, it is absolute with respect to the position of its parent. Okay, that is just the difference. It is going to take whichever height and width it is having and it will stick there basically when it is absolute. So I wanted that the elements, all the elements that I had added here, they should be absolute. Okay, so in absolute, since the parent was placed here, that is why what it took the up position only. When they are in absolute, it is going to take the top position ki, okay, I'll be in this place only. So that is why when I just gave absolute and top and bottom, it stuck to this place itself. Okay, so that is what your position absolute does. Now let's come to the footer element, guys. Since this section is also done, let's now come to our footer section, which is the last section. Let us just complete it ASAP. So if you see here, again, we have all these columns. We have one, two, three, and fourth column, right? So what we are going to do, we are again going to create different divs inside which all these points will be there, right? So I'll just quickly add these points. For this, what you need to do, you need to create a div again, okay, and it will have footer. It will have the class called footer content. Inside this, as oops, content, right? Now, as I told you, let us consider them to be points. So we have 1 point, 2 point, 3 point, and we have three divs. Okay, so we will break this element into four parts: div 1, div 2, div 3, div 4. And how will we make them in the same line? We'll give the parent, which is this footer content, a display flex. So again, that display flex only we are following the layout structure. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to give div dot points. Okay, let me give the value company here. Okay, now inside ul, let me create ul, inside which I'll create li, inside which I'm going to add a tag. The ref will be empty as of now. Let me write about. Okay, so let me just copy and paste it 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 times. Okay, or let us do one thing. Since we have the css present here, I'll rather take the reference from here. So what we are doing, I'm just copy and pasting these li items, adding him here so that we need not add it repeatedly. Next, we have the same kind of div. So what I'm going to do, I'm just copying and pasting this div three times. Okay, let's see what do we have now. So we have all these elements. The last thing that we need to add are these two images. So for that, if you see, these images we need to add here. So from where will we get it? From here. So I'll just copy this last to get the images. I'll copy it from here, and in the last div, I'll add it here. Okay. So now we have them line by line in a column format, right? But we want them to be in flex. So how do we do that? Again, now let's come to the CSS then, right? So let us come to the CSS again. So this is the footer section CSS that I'm going to create. So we have the footer section. I'll tag the footer class. I'll give it a padding of 0 and 20 pixels. Okay, 0 from top and bottom and 20 from left and right. Next, I'm going to give this a z index of 10. Okay, and a background color of black. That is what we require. Black is 000, it's hex code. Okay, min height, I'll give it a minimum height of 298 pixels. Let's see what do we have. Okay, we have something like this, right? Let me give this a width of 100%. I wanted to take 100% width, and the color should be FFF, which is white. So these texts are having this color, but for these colors, first of all, now we need to target the footer content, okay, to make everything in flex. So I target the footer content, and in footer content, what I'll do, I'll give first thing that I'll do is obviously give it flex. Okay, now let's see what do we have. Okay, they are in flex now, right? I'll give justify content. I want space around. What does space around do? It gives space around every element. From left and right, it is going to give 1 unit of space, and from between it gives 2 units of spaces in case of space around. To this also, what I'll do, I'll give a max width of 1200 pixels and a min width of 1200 pixels again. Okay, and to bring it to center again, if you remember, we use this technique zero and auto. margin. So now everything is in center. I'll give the padding. From top and bottom, I want it to be 76 pixels. From left and right, since we have already given, we don't want much padding. And that is enough. Okay. Background color we had already given here. Now, moving to the next part, to these points. Now comes these points that we have. So let us target these points. So the class was this points, right? I'll give them the color 808080. If you can see here, the font size I'll keep it to be 15 pixels. Font weight I'll give it 600, let's say. Okay, I'll give it a width of 300 pixels, and I'll give them the margin of 26 pixels, 0 and 10 pixels and 15 pixels. So let's come ahead and see what are we having here. So we are having something like this. That is what we are trying to make here too. Now comes these link list items, right? To which we have given footer list, footer li. So let me target this footer li. So to all this, let me give a padding first of all, of 20 pixels or 10 pixels, 2 pixels, let's say, and 0 pixels. To the footer UL, the main UL item, what we'll do, we'll give a list style type of none, because we don't want these dots list style. Sorry, it will be null. Okay, let's see if we have this footer UL. Okay, I had only used UL, that is why it is not taking this. So we have only UL and we have dot points and this UL. So now if you can see, it's not having this. I'll give everything again a display of flex, and flex direction will be column in this case. Okay, everything will be in column. All the ULs, all the list items in this will be in flex direction column, although they are already there, so we need not. So okay, if you see, they are not in this order, so I'll add flex direction. Now can you see? Since I added display flex, so it was taking row by default, but we wanted it to be in column format. That is why I had given flex direction column, which is now going to place things in column format, right? Now let's come to footer li and all the elements that are present inside, the a tags that are present inside this footer li. So I'll target all of them. We want to remove the text decoration, right? So I'll make the text decoration as none. I'll give it the color white, FFF, the white color that we have. Then let me give it a font size of 15 pixels. Oops. Font size to be 15 pixels. Then we have font weight also. So I'll give it a font weight of 700. So we have it now. Let's give it some font weight. Okay, so the font weight will actually be 400. That is why it will be 300. Sorry, that is why it is shining so much. So yeah, this looks better now. On hover, what I want key the font weight should increase. Or let's say now let's target these images. So inside the points we were having this images. Okay. To them I want that there should be a border, if you see, solid, and I'll give them 8080 border. So now they're having this image border around them. I'll give them some padding of 10 pixels. Okay, let's give it padding. Now they have padding in between them. I want to give them margin also. So I'll give the margin value of 30 pixels, 0 pixels, 10 pixels, and 57 pixels. So then I have some space. I'll give the border some radius. So I'll give border radius of 10 pixels. And yeah, that looks perfect now. So here we have completed our Swiggy clone. So that was it. This is what we wanted. We have completed our Swiggy clone finally. And all the other pages, as I already told you, they are quite similar in Swiggy. So maybe you can replicate the pages. Okay. If you see here, all the components are quite similar everywhere. So you can just try and practice this. Also, for the code, let me provide you the code. So I have attached the code here in my link. So you can go here and you can find, I'll add this thing in the section also. Let me add it in chat somewhere. Okay, I'll try to add it inside the description that is present. Okay, so you can find it inside my GitHub repos named Swiggy clone. Okay, and the username that is there, Gorsuman 845. Yeah, that's all. I hope this session was quite fruitful. Any doubts you guys are having, please tell me. Anything you guys want to understand once again. So I hope whatever things I told you, you learned a lot from this session. So can you just point out what all things, maybe something new you would have learned from this session, right? जो इससे पहले you might have not used. Maybe some of you might have not used developer tools or used it for CSS purposes. So any new thing you learned in this session? So, guys, for the project link, what we'll do, you guys can come back to the channel again to this particular video once it's done. And then what you can do is you can, we'll add this link properly in the description so that it's easier for everyone who is again coming back to this video. Okay. So, you guys can get the code, the whole source code from the description section. Okay. Now you guys can come up with the questions. I'll see each of these questions now since I have time. So I'll just check all the questions and I'll answer all the questions that you are having. Yes, guys, see, for if you want to be front-end devs, so in that case, you need to learn HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and then your frameworks come. So in frameworks, you have React, which is the very important front-end library that is being used in these days in good companies and big companies. So you should learn React also, but basic for front-end, you should have a very good grasp on and a grip on what you say, JavaScript. Thank you guys, and I hope that you understand that from next time onwards, whenever someone asks you to create a clone of a website, or maybe someone has provided you a design of a website, how to break that, first break that into pieces, break that into small portions, use the layouts that I told you, how to uh, break it into divs. Because when you use positions, and then when you use what you say, the display flex and grid, they can be applied very easily when you use divs. So use as much divs as you can, break your components into divs. Okay. React and Angular is not must, but yes, if you are applying for front end things, like if you want to pursue front end, then obviously uh, you should know about either of them, React or Angular. At least you should have some idea, because as much as you'll practice and know new things, at least you'll have a better idea of that technology. Okay. So, any other questions, guys? Also, you guys can connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm there on LinkedIn. Again, my username is Asuman Ghosh. You'll be able to search it. So you can find me on LinkedIn as well. The code, as I'm repeating again, the source code will be provided in the description section of your this thing, uh, the channel description, this particular code's description. So don't worry about that. Yeah, so someone is asking, do we need DSA for front end roles? Yes, for applying to good companies like Flipkart, Swiggy, Mantra, and all the product based companies, at least they ask for DSA. Not that you need to know everything in DSA, key trees, graphs, aisa nahi, but at least the basics, at least till recursion, you should have a good grip. Or if I specifically tell you the topics, it will be arrays, strings, recursion. These are some very important topics. Apart from that, it would be good if you know about uh, trees and stacks and queues, at least the basic things, right? So that will be enough, not more than that. So the link is I guess for the certificates you guys are having, the link was shared in the chat section, so you need to fill that form to get the certificates. Okay. And also, again, all these queries, if you want to connect with me, again, you can always connect with me on LinkedIn. Apart from that, since IIT and we are working together for all the courses, and then for front end especially, like I work for front end. So maybe if you have any question and you're not finding my ID, at least remember my name, right? It's Suman Ghosh. So we can connect via IIT also. So my good name is Suman Ghosh. Also, okay, so I see some questions like CSS framework. So there are no CSS frameworks. There are libraries in CSS like Bootstrap, Tailwind, and many other libraries are there in CSS. Okay. Framework is something very vast, if I'd say. It's very vast. Library is a smaller part. So CSS is not having frameworks, it is having libraries. Okay, guys, so that's all for today's class. I'll just join you guys again sometime for some other session, right? So for this time, I'll just keep it till here. So thank you so much. Thanks a lot. see you again in some other session, or meet you, or you, like as I said, we guys can connect on LinkedIn. Thanks a lot. Bye, guys.